As the woman appeared before Han Li, her name appeared in his mind. She was Mei Ning, who traveled with him from the Umbra realm to the heavenly south. Her beauty became more captivating over the few years he hadn't seen her. This junior was only able to reach her current cultivation because of the pills that senior gave me in the past. At that moment, Cultivator Song walked up from behind Han Li and spoke in a familiar manner. "Little sister Mei, is fellow Taoist violet spirit inside?" This caused Han Li to look at her with slight surprise. Not daring to neglect the two, Mei Ning wore an apologetic expression and said, "Senior Song, elder sister Violet Spirit is currently cultivating inside her room, but her cycle should be done soon. How about you two wait in my room for now?" Han Li raised no objections. With his spiritual sense, he was able to see from Violet Spirit's spiritual chi fluctuations that she was on the verge of finishing a cultivation cycle. The two then entered one of the stone buildings under Mei Ning's modest invitation, and they both took a seat. Afterwards, Mei Ning quickly steeped a cup of tea for each of them. Han Li took a sip of tea and calmly asked, "Lady Mei, where have you and Violet Spirit been cultivating these past few years? Could it be that the two of you haven't yet entered a sect?" Standing at Han Li's side, Mei Ning lowered her head and replied, "Big sister Violet Spirit and I had a discussion about this. We will first observe the great sects of the heavenly south and consolidate our cultivation before deciding on a sect. As such, we've been traveling in the last few years. After all, the circumstances in the heavenly south are quite a bit different from our original home." Seeing that Mei Ning didn't conceal that she was a foreign cultivator, Han Li came to a realization that his martial niece Song most likely knew that they came from the scattered star seas. It seems her relationship with Violet Spirit was quite close. But upon seeing Mei Ning's gentle and sincere behavior, Han Li stroked his nose and felt it awkward to continue his questions. He simply turned to look at Cultivator Song at the side and smiled. "You didn't bring me here on behalf of Violet Spirit just so that we could reminisce about old times, right? Otherwise, there should be no need to be so secretive and hesitant about delivering the letter." "Martial Uncle I." Cultivator Song's complexion grew slightly red and she swallowed. Mei Ning revealed a trace of embarrassment. Just as she thought to say something, a woman suddenly laughed from outside the room. "Brother Han, there is no need to make it so difficult for these two little sisters. In truth, it was mostly my idea to invite you here." Just after she finished speaking, Fairy Violet Spirit walked in. Her appearance was more captivating and her eyes more luminous than ever before. "In truth, I should actually be calling Brother Han as senior now. However, I feel that Brother Han is a more appropriate title as your age isn't necessarily larger than mine. Brother Han certainly won't mind." Violet Spirit spoke with a smile. Having met her in Heaven Void Hall and the Umbra realm as well as the days he spent with her in the Endless Seas, Han Li felt that she was a close friend. Han Li shot the woman an appraising glance. Despite his current cultivation at nascent soul stage, he felt his spirit shake upon seeing Violet Spirit's true appearance. She was no doubt country-shattering beauty from legend. Solely with regards to beauty, even his beloved was an entirely level lower. Of course, Nangong Wan's calm temperament and charm belonged to a completely different category. They couldn't be compared. "It makes no difference to me. However, if Lady Violet Spirit were to walk out of this valley with her true appearance, she will bring about chaos in the heavenly south. If any of those old eccentrics were to see you, I fear they would attempt to take you by force." It was in the presence of this old friend that Han Li was able to say the seldom joke. Violet Spirit smiled and gave Han Li a glance before calling out towards Cultivator Song. "I've troubled you quite a bit, Big Sister Song. Mei Ning and I found it difficult to travel into Skyfer City." "It's nothing. Since I am also involved in this matter, exerting a bit of effort is only natural." The woman still appeared somewhat astonished. Although she knew Violet Spirit and Han Li were truly old friends, she was quite astonished to see them acting so casually with one another, and it greatly bolstered her confidence in the matter to come. At that moment, Violet Spirit sweetly smiled at Han Li and casually said, "Every time I see Brother Han, it seems his cultivation vastly increases each time. This unknown cultivation art of yours is truly astonishing. And now, Brother Han's resounding fame has left us at a loss for words. Rumors have spread everywhere that Brother Han's strength is greater than even a mid-nascent soul stage cultivator. Is this matter true?" Once that was said, Violet Spirit mysteriously smiled at Han Li, her eyes faintly revealing a trace of anticipation. Han Li's heart stirred and he pondered for a moment. Rather than offering a direct response, he calmly asked, "Lady Violet Spirit, why is the first thing you ask me is about my strength? Isn't that too impatient? Can you tell me why you sought me out first? I hope to understand this before we move on to other matters." When she heard Han Li, she blinked and wore an embarrassed expression. "I was impatient, it is true. However, this should come as no surprise. This matter is truly important. If you have the abilities of a mid-nascent soul stage cultivator or greater, our plan will have a chance to succeed." Han Li's gaze flickered and his smile disappeared. He calmly asked, "What is so important? If you need my help, you may as well ask me clearly." Violet Spirit's expression grew solemn. "It seems there is no need for me to say. Brother Han had already guessed. We truly sought fellow Taoist Han for help. But before this, I want to ask you a question. Not long before, did fellow Taoist Han accompany a few nascent soul eccentrics to the Mulan Plains and acquire Master Kang Kun's remains?" With slight surprise, Han Li asked, "How do you know about that? This matter should only be known to few." Mei Ning sweetly smiled and said, "It was something we found out from a ghost spirit sect cultivator. They are of direct lineage with a ghost spirit sect elder. He accidentally saw Big Sister Violet Spirit's true appearance and became entirely captivated her. There is nothing he won't say." "Stupid girl, what nonsense are you saying?" Violet Spirit snorted and her cheeks blushed. It seemed the two had grown quite close over the years. Han Li nodded and suspicion appeared on his face. If the ghost spirit sect is involved, this matter can't be ordinary. Violet Spirit's bright eyes flickered, and she said with a sweet voice, "I didn't expect brother to still be so cautious after entering nascent soul stage. I've only recently entered nascent soul stage. If I don't want to die, I must be careful. Being careful is only natural. However, why does it matter that I head to the Mulan Plains in search for treasures? Could it be that you acquired another secret from the ghost spirit sect?" Han Li curiously asked. Seeing that Han Li was truly familiar with Violet Spirit, Cultivator Song felt less at ease and interjected herself. "Martial Uncle is truly insightful. This matter involves a treasure inside Devil Fall Valley. The Ghost Spirit Sect disciple unintentionally revealed this as we were talking about it." After a moment of surprise, Han Li wore an odd expression and said, "Devil Fall Valley. I recall that only Master Kang Kun was able to safely leave there alive. How does the Ghost Spirit Sect know of a treasure inside it? Were you not deceived?" Violet Spirit's eyes shined and said, "This isn't the case. At the time, we were curious and we joined hands to perform a charming technique. Not only did we manage to acquire the treasure's name, but we also found out the treasure's approximate location. As for why the Ghost Spirit Sect knows of this matter, the person in question also didn't know. However, this matter is most likely true." Han Li frowned. "If this matter is true, then this must be an unordinary ancient treasure. What is this treasure that you covet so greatly?" The three women quickly exchanged a glance. Cultivator Song then solemnly asked, "Has Martial Uncle Han ever heard of the Spirit Kindle fruit?" Han Li's calm expression was now replaced with astonishment. "What? The Spirit Kindle fruit? If I remember correctly, the fruit itself should be extinct. However, Devil Fall Valley had been sealed since times of antiquity. Perhaps it is truly inside the valley. It seems Brother Han knows much about the spirit fruit. Then he should also know of the nature origin pill. In legend, so long as one uses this pill, they will be able to break through any bottleneck short of deity transformation stage. It is also said that cultivators who took this pill had their spiritual senses undergo a transformation and ascend to an inconceivable level. Although these rumors are unclear to the point that recorded results differ from each individual, the legend of cultivators breaking through the bottleneck was always consistent. Despite the many records throughout the ages, they all mention the great name of this spirit pill. It is a pity that the main ingredient to refine it, the spirit kindle fruit, was extremely difficult to find even in the age of antiquity. Although the pill formula was preserved, it remained unused for eras. Despite their former knowledge of this matter, Cultivator Song and Mei Ning couldn't help but reveal excitement upon hearing it once more. Mei Ning in particular was excited about the nature origin pill as it would vastly increase her chances of reaching core formation stage. But at that moment, Han Li's excitement slowly faded as he pondered about the matter. After some careful consideration, Han Li calmly replied, "If the spirit fruit is in Devil Fall Valley, that explains why the Ghost Spirit Sect went through such lengths to hire those treasure-seeking nascent soul cultivators and kill Marquis Nanlong for Master Kang Kun's treasure. Still, there are a few things I still don't understand that I need you to explain. I will not be braving this danger otherwise, despite how tempting the fruit may be. Brother Han, please don't hesitate to ask about anything. As this matter is important, We cannot have anything overlooked. Violet Spirit felt some admiration for Han Li, having seen him so calm at the mention of the nature origin pill. Han Li stroked his chin and asked, "While I did make a trip to the Mulan Plains, why is it that you sought me out? The one who knows best how to enter Devil Fall Valley should be Marquis Nanlong, unless you know of some other method to enter the valley." "I know that Marquis Nanlong holds the method to enter the valley. However, with his rumored temperament, how could I dare to have a secret discussion with him? As for Brother Han, we know you to be someone who doesn't forget past friendships, and we feel far more at ease with you. With regards to entering the valley, that same Ghost Spirit Sect disciple told me that their sect has been researching this method for a while now, and their research is growing close to completion. While this person doesn't know the specific details, they did mention that the Ghost Spirit Sect will be certain to act the next period where the spatial tiers in Devil Fall Valley stabilize. If Brother Han's cultivation isn't enough, then let's leave the matter be. After all, even if he safely enters the valley, who knows what calamitous dangers lie within." Once this was said, Violet Spirit revealed a hesitant expression. And Li pondered to himself for a long while before sighing. "The Ghost Spirit Sect also has a way to enter the valley. This is the first time I've heard of this, but from your tone, it seems there isn't much information about it. How about this? It is still a few years before Devil Fall Valley spatial tiers stabilize. Before then, make a few deeper inquiries and make certain that the information is true. If the Spirit Kindle fruit is truly within the valley, I will take the risk. As for cultivation, you don't need to worry about it. If I cannot succeed, then a mid-nascent soul cultivator likely wouldn't be able to either." And Li didn't mention that Marquis Nanlong had earlier made contact with him about Devil Fall Valley. Although the Spirit Kindle fruit was truly tempting, Han Li need to further consider the matter. If the Ghost Spirit Sect's method of entering the valley was safer, he didn't need to mention Marquis Nanlong's matter to them. Violet Spirit wasn't dejected in the least from Han Li's vague answer. Rather, she was happy about it. Knowing his cautious attitude, those words were practically an agreement. Moreover, his tone may as well have confirmed the rumors to be true. With his current abilities, his chances of acquiring the Spirit Kindle fruit will be all the better. At that moment, she smiled and said, "In truth, the reason why we so impatiently sought out Brother Han was because we felt that if we didn't find a capable partner, this entire matter would result in nothing, and any further action would have been wasted effort. But now that Brother Han has agreed, we will feel more at ease investigating this issue. After all, we also wish to enter the valley. We don't wish to treat our lives as a joke." "What, you three wish to enter the valley?" When Han Li heard this, he felt his heart thump, and an expression of surprise appeared on his face. With a bitter smile, Violet Spirit helplessly said, "Does Brother Han think we want to enter the valley? We are only doing this out of necessity. A majority of ancient books only record its marvelous effects, but there were a few records that all pointed out that the Spirit Kindle fruit cannot survive once picked. It will need to be immediately refined in half a day. Once it exceeds that point, the fruit's medicinal power will vastly decrease, and at 3 days it completely disappears. But most terrible of all is the nature origin pills. If they aren't consumed shortly after they are refined, they completely lose their efficacy. As such, Devil Fall Valley is something that we must force ourselves to brave. It is better than remaining stagnant in our cultivation for 100 years, maybe even several hundreds." Han Li frowned. "I've looked through many ancient records, but not once have I heard that the Spirit Kindle fruit had such limitations. Why have I never heard of this before?" "Martial Uncle Han, there is an ancient book of secrets that was passed down from the ancestors of the Song clan. I have a copy of it right here. Please take a look at it." Much to his surprise, Cultivator Song took out a jade slip from her storage pouch and respectfully offered it to Han Li. An astonished expression appeared on his face, and he gave the woman a cautious glance before nodding and reading the jade slip with his spiritual sense. This ancient book introduced pills and medicines from times of antiquity, including a few that Han Li have seen before. They even gave a detailed explanation of the Ninecurl spirit ginseng, and included the pill formula that the Bone Sage had given him. He found many medicine pills that were quite useful towards nascent soul stage cultivators. Although the pill materials were lost since times of antiquity, it was always best to be prepared in case he found some unknown spirit medicine pill in the future, else he wouldn't know what to do with them. It appeared cultivation clans still had a few good things even large cultivation sects didn't have. Using his powerful spiritual sense, he was able to quickly find the Spirit Kindle fruit among the many entries in the jade slip. Sure enough, he found the limitations of the Spirit Kindle fruit and the nature origin pill within. He unconsciously frowned after reading them. A short moment later, he withdrew his spiritual sense, but rather than speaking, he rubbed the glossy surface of the jade slip and muttered to himself for a short moment. With great tact, Cultivator Song said, I heard Big Sister Violet Spirit mention that Martial Uncle Han obtained great attainments with regards to pill refinement. This ancient record is of little value to our Song clan. Although there are many ancient pill formulas, the main ingredients for each of them aren't something that our Song clan are able of acquiring. If Martial Uncle doesn't find it disdainful, he may take the jade slip. Please consider it a gift for accepting our request, Martial Uncle. And Lee paused and took a deep look at the woman before smiling. With a moment of thought, he calmly said, I've never been a cheap individual in my life. If the spirit kindle fruit is truly within the valley, I will also greatly benefit from it, so there is no need to reward me. It is likely that I would have gone to the valley anyway. However, this ancient book of yours is quite useful to me. How about I exchange it for some medicine pills for cultivation progression? These pills should be suitable for your current cultivation. Han Li then took a small green bottle from the storage pouch on his waist and handed it over to Cultivator Song. The woman unconsciously accepted the bottle, but her face appeared hesitant as if she were at a complete loss. When Violet Spirit saw this, she simply smiled. Violet Spirit chuckled and said, Since it was given it to you, Big Sister Song should take it. Brother Han's pill refinement techniques are truly vast. The pills are most likely refined from some high-grade demon cores. It will definitely bring your cultivation to the next stage. There is no need to hold back with business. Cultivator Song revealed delight upon hearing Violet Spirit. She repeatedly uttered thanks to Han Li before carefully putting the medicine bottle away. Han Li smiled and took away the jade slip. Since the spirit kindle fruit and the nature origin pill cannot be preserved, it seems you three will be heading into the valley. If you are going straight to the spirit fruit and head nowhere else, there is a good chance of leaving intact. But for now, you should first gather together the supplementary materials for the nature origin pill. Although these ingredients aren't nearly as rare as the spirit kindle fruit, they will be difficult to find. Han Li then sighed and solemnly said, With regards to the details, I will only make a decision once everything is understood. After all, this matter is still quite a while away. If we are defeated in the war against the Mulan, the matter about Devilfall Valley can't even be considered. By then, we'll be attempting to retain our place in the heavenly south. The three were startled upon hearing Han Li. Mei Ning couldn't help but ask, What? Senior Han doesn't seem confident in this war. And Li noncommittally said, It's hard to say. At first glance, the united forces of the heavenly south along with the home terrain advantage should be able to prevail against the Mulan. Even if the heavenly south's three great cultivators and the heavenly Dao alliances Long Han and Feng Bing are able to restrain the Mulan divine sages, those black-robed men are of unknown origins. They clearly belong to an external power meddling on our wary. They may cause something unexpected to happen. Violet Spirit's expression turned grave. From what you're saying, the odds of victory for either side are even. It can be said that way. However, the most likely possibility is. Han Li's gaze flickered and his voice grew inaudible, much to the three women's surprise. Han Li shook his head and calmly said, All right, that's enough of that. No one truly knows how the war will turn out in the future. You simply need to make preparations for entering Devilfall Valley. Let's see if it is possible when the time comes. Who knows what might happen? Afterwards, Han Li no longer spoke of it. Rather, he curiously asked about what Mei Ning and Violet Spirit have been doing these past few days. At the same time, Han Li answered the excited questions about his escape from the Mulan divine sage. Since speaking in such pleasant company as these three beauties was truly a delightful matter, time quickly passed by. When Han Li saw that the sky had darkened, he took his leave. Cultivator Song also parted with him with Violet Spirit and Mei Ning seeing them off at the valley's entrance. When they departed, Han Li saw that Mei Ning hesitated to say something several times, but in the end, she bit her lip and remained silent. Han Li felt his heart throb at seeing her blush, and he turned his gaze to Violet Spirit, who looked at him with a mysterious smile. Unconsciously feeling a trace of embarrassment, he didn't dare to say any longer. With a parting word, Han Li flew off as a streak of azure light, bringing Cultivator Song with him back to Skyforce City. Han Li and Cultivator Song flew alone in the skies, and they spoke not a word. But when they saw Skyforce City in the distance, the woman hesitantly asked, Martial Uncle Han, countless nascent soul eccentrics had entered Devilfall Valley and had never returned. Would core formation cultivators be able to find the spirit fruit and safely return from the valley? Han Li was somewhat surprised by her question, and the light around them pulsed, causing them to slow down. He then astonishedly glanced at the woman. After a moment of silence, he calmly said, "On cultivation alone, you are lacking much in comparison to the other cultivators that have sought treasure in the valley. If you encountered any danger, your chances of surviving would be vastly inferior. However, it is likely due to greed that these cultivators have perished. With so many nascent soul cultivators, there had to be some cultivators that could safely leave with one or two treasures, but most of them were blinded by the temptation for treasure, wishing to acquire just another item or perhaps some spirit medicine that can extend their lifespan or break through their bottleneck. As such, it was only a matter of time before they perished." Cultivator Song frowned with worry. Then from Senior's words, "We will most likely die. If one doesn't have a safe route through the valley and a way to leave and enter, they will most definitely die. Apart from Master Kang Qin, no one else had lived to leave the valley. Unless we have this, we shouldn't even consider entering Devil Fall Valley. It would be suicide. Although your cultivation is low, so long as you control your greed and fully investigate the whereabouts of the spirit kindle fruit, you'll be able to make succeed with some luck. Of course, Devil Fall Valley is the most dangerous area in Devil Fall Valley. You should properly prepare yourself and set up your affairs in case you perish. As for the Ghost Spirit Sect, they should also know of the fruit and will acting to acquire it. They will most likely rush to be the first to acquire the treasure in the valley, forced to brave dangers in the fear that Marquis Nanlong will be faster. I fear their method of entering the valley will be quite risky." A trace of alarm appeared on the woman's face. Since Martial Uncle had guessed that the Ghost Spirit Sect's method of entering the valley is dangerous, why didn't you mention it before? Han Li smirked. "Didn't it seem inappropriate to tell this in front of the others? Could it be that you believe I have other intentions?" After a brief pause of surprise, she hurriedly said, "No, I don't dare to doubt Senior." "Relax. It is natural that you have doubts. It wasn't out of malice that I didn't mention this before. While this may come as some surprise to you and Mei Ning, Violet Spirit wouldn't be shaken by this in the last. You should know that while the Nature Origin Pill is extremely precious, it is a bit of a waste on early core formation cultivators like you and Violet Spirit. With regards to Mei Ning, she will have a greater chance of entering core formation stage with the pill, and as a result, her lifespan will be extended by several hundred years. But with you and Violet Spirit, you too would most likely break through to mid-core formation stage with time in respect to your exceptional aptitudes. If you take the pill, it will only save you about 100 years to break through the bottleneck. On one hand, you and Violet Spirit will save yourselves 100 years of cultivation, but on the other, you could die after entering Devil Fall Valley. These two choices vary from person to person. I don't know what you will choose, Martial Niece, but Violet Spirit would definitely take the risk. 100 years saved on cultivation is an additional 100 years she further cultivate, and she doesn't plan on staying as a core formation cultivator. This will vastly increase her chances of reaching nascent soul stage. As Han Li spoke, it was with a heavy tone. Cultivator Song revealed an odd expression. Martial Uncle means to say that Violet Spirit has already steeled her resolve to become a nascent soul cultivator. Is that why she is willing to brave the grave dangers of the valley? And Li turned his head to glance at the fading red sky as if reminiscing in past memories, and he slowly said, "That's right. Violet Spirit's experiences are quite different from you and Mei Ning. She had been pressured by powerful cultivators several times, and even had her own mother's sect taken away from her. Although she hadn't mentioned this to anyone else after she had fled, I can faintly feel that her ambition has far surpassed that of an ordinary cultivator." Then under Cultivator Song's amazed gaze, Han Li paused for a moment as if deliberating what to say. "If the spirit kindle fruit is truly within the valley, I will most likely make an attempt for it. After all, it is incredibly difficult to progress one's cultivation in nascent soul stage. If I do not seize this opportunity, I may find myself forever stuck at early nascent soul stage. However, I won't be saying about being overly careful before entering Devil Fall Valley, unless it is absolutely necessary. When the time comes to enter, I'll be sure to stress what dangers you should be careful of and point out any dangerous aspects of the Ghost Spirit Sex method to enter the valley. Nevertheless, what I said before were merely guesses. It is possible that the Ghost Spirit Sect has a method of entering the valley that is even greater than Master Kang Kun's. This was also one of the reasons I hadn't mentioned the matter from before." When Cultivator Song heard this, she grew silent, but her eyes seemed to reveal understanding. "Enough of that. I originally didn't plan on telling you this, but since you asked, I gave you an answer. Having returned to Skyfer City, your most important task is to survive the battle ahead. It will be your top priority. If you run out of luck, something may happen during the war and you need not further consider going to Devilfall Valley. It will be the same for me. When I return to Skyfer City, I will be setting the matter aside for more pressing affairs. With that said, Han Li wore a self-mocking smirk. Cultivator Song felt her heart trembled at his words and curtsied. Many thanks for Martial Uncle's advice. Han Li waved his arm. It is hardly advice, just needlessly said things that you would have come to understand after some thought. Let's enter the city, the sky is nearly dark. Yes, Martial Uncle. The azure streak of light shot forth at full speed once more, and entered through the gates of the city. Several days later in the Drifting Cloud Sect's encampment, Han Li was sitting cross-legged in a hidden room surrounded by layers of restrictions. He was holding up a 15-meter-long sword in his hands and was thinking of something with a frown. Strange azure and purple flames were currently burning on top of them, the purple apex flames and the azure flames of the azure lantern. After he came back from his meeting with Violet Spirit, Han Li had Lu Luo introduce him to many nascent soul cultivators with good relations to the Drifting Cloud Sect. During that time, he asked this various cultivators to take a look at this difficult problem. However, they were at a complete loss over the matter. These cultivators naturally knew of Han Li's great reputation, so they didn't dare to be negligent and wished to establish good relations with him instead. There were a few that even had a rather pleasant conversation with him, but nevertheless, Han Li gained little from his discussions. Afterwards, he immediately sought out a quiet room to deal with the lingering damage of the battle, the azure flames that had never ceased burning. The swords weren't harmed as the flames burned. They were in balanced competition with the purple apex flames. While it was unknown what kind of devil flame this azure flame was, its might was just as astonishing as his own purple apex flames. He could now rely on quantity to forcefully restrain the flames, but it was still a problem with how he could refine them. If these azure flames weren't eliminated, he wouldn't be able to use his bamboo cloudswarm swords, nor would he be able to easily draw on the celestial ice flames and purple apex flames to attack. At that moment, Han Li was staring at the sword with wandering eyes. After a long moment of consideration, he raised his hand above the huge sword and struck it with an azure spell seal. The huge sword revolved once in the air and split into several tens of small flying swords with a ring. Han Li's spiritual sense stirred, and a majority of his flying swords shot back into his body as streaks of azure lights. Only one sword remained in the air, slowly floating in front of Han Li. Han Li glanced at the sword's azure and purple flames. He narrowed his eyes and he suddenly opened his mouth, spitting out a streak of purple flames directly onto the surface of the flying sword. It flourished with purple flames, restraining the azure flames. Then, under the control of an incantation seal, roiling purple flames slowly pressured the azure flames to the tip of the swords, before turning into a pea-sized ball of azure light. Having seen this, Han Li wore a grave expression. With a deep breath, he began to form incantation gestures in a flurry, sending streak after streak of various colored spell seals onto the sword. In an instant, the sword's purple flames grew turbulent and more powerful as they formed wave after wave of flames towards the tip of the azure sword. The azure flame began to sway and grow unsteady on the sword tip, as if it were about to be extinguished. However, the azure light simply grew brighter as the purple flames exert more pressure. No matter what the purple flames did, the azure light remained at the sword tip without being extinguished. A trace of dread appeared from his eyes, as the hand incantations he formed grew more hurried. A short moment later, Han Li's face grew unsightly. There wasn't any change in the slightest. Then, with another moment of thought, an icy glint appeared in his eye and he waved his hand, covering it in a layer of brilliant purple flames. Then, without the slightest hesitation, he pinched off the azure flames from the flying swords. Han Li pinched the azure flames at the tip of the sword and held them in his inflamed fingers. However, he felt his fingertips grow numb as a huge force began to emit from the azure flames and forcefully repelled his grasp, the azure flames still remaining on the sword. Han Li was dumbstruck, but something soon came to mind. He widened his flaming hand and had the purple flames alone envelope the azure flames. Han Li's hand remained still as his fingers continued to spout blinding violet flames, causing intertwined azure and purple light to pulse. This continued for quarter-hour more before he sighed and shook his hand. The purple flames in his hand disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only a dazzling and translucent ember of azure flame. This strange flame was more troublesome than he had anticipated. The violet apex flames may be able to contend against them, but it found it difficult to refine them. After some further deliberation, Han Li raised his hand and pointed to the flying sword in front of him. With muffled claps of thunder, the flying sword burst forth with arcs of golden lightning. As soon as the lightning appeared, it shot towards the azure ember in countless tendrils and completely enveloped it. The pea-sized ember glowed and cleanly absorbed the golden lightning as if it were a bottomless pit. Its brilliance grew vastly bright, and the flame swelled to the size of an egg. As this occurred, Han Li's eyes shined with a bright blue light as he stared at the azure ember absorbing the golden lightning. His expression wavered as he stood still for an unknown amount of time before sighing. The blue light within his eyes faded away, but his face now appeared hesitant. A short moment later, he came to a decision and nodded. He opened his mouth and breathed in the bit of purple flame that still remained on the flying sword. Without the suppression of the purple apex flames, the azure flames on the sword flourished and enveloped the entire sword in a mere moment. As the treasure was bonded to Han Li's soul, his face immediately paled from the pain that followed. However, he didn't pay this any further attention and simply flicked his fingers towards the sword, shooting streaks of azure sword streaks from his hands. The azure sword streaks had been completely absorbed just like the divine devil-bane lightning. However, Han Li continued to circulate the spiritual power inside his body as if nothing had happened and continued to strike the azure ember with repeated attacks of sword streaks, quickly consuming their magic power. As a result, the azure flames took the sword streaks as kindle, causing them to roar and surge with brilliant light. At that moment, Han Li had already consumed a third of his magic power. With the lantern flames greatly enlarged, Han Li smiled and ceased attacking. Instead, he beckoned at the sword chi within the fireball. In a gust of wind, the bamboo cloudswarm sword was able to easily leave the azure flames. It circled once around before landing in his hand. Han Li lowered his head and took a look at it. He couldn't help but smile at the translucent blade being completely free of flame. As expected, although the flames are miraculous, it has a limit of how much spiritual power it can absorb. Once it absorbed too much of the azure sword chi, it was capable of being manipulated. Once that was muttered, he slapped his hands together and the sword disappeared in a flash of light. Han Li then turned his eyes towards the azure ball of flame before him. He lightly tapped it, sending a sliver of his spiritual sense into it. The azure fireball then trembled and began to slowly revolve as it pulsed with light. Han Li raised his brow and attempted to command the fireball with his spiritual sense, but it merely swayed from start to finish. A short moment later, he was able to command it to sluggishly fly 3 meters into an air at a crooked angle. When Han Li saw this, he stroked his chin and began to mutter to himself. Given how powerful the azure flames were, it would be a waste not to use them. Although he was able to forcefully control the flames from the large quantities of azure essence sword chi that it had absorbed, it was clear to see that this method also came with its flaws. After all, these flames weren't something that he had refined. It would be difficult to control it as naturally as the celestial ice flames. Han Li frowned and stared at the azure fireball as his mind wandered. He then reached for his storage pouch and summoned a flawlessly smooth rib bone and a faint yellow bottle into his hand. This was the Bone Sage's Jade slip that recorded the profound yin arts and the magic tool he had used to absorb demon beast souls. Han Li opened the bottle and released a cloud of black chi. He grabbed the air in the direction of the black chi and summoned it into his palm. Then, under the control of his spiritual sense, the ghost chi immediately flew into the rib bone that he held in his other hand. In a moment, it turned black and began to float in the air, releasing a sinister black light. When Han Li saw this, he pressed the bone against his forehead and quickly read through the contents of the profound yin arts, searching for something in particular. Just as Han Li found the yin fire lightning technique, he rejoiced and began to carefully read through its contents. While the technique's name may suggest it to be ordinary, it was a technique on par with the profound yin arts heaven-wide corpseifier. However, it wasn't some secret devil Dao technique. Rather, it was a secret technique to refine lightning beads like the heavenly lightning seed that Han Li had used in the past. According to its description, the yin fire lightning possessed astonishing might when successfully created, displaying a destructive might even greater than the heaven-wide corpseifier. First introduced in Chapter 163, while Han Li was still in chi condensation stage. In principle, condensing such a large quantity of pure yin fire into an explosive required other materials in order to stabilize it, creating a weapon that was capable of inflicting devastating damage. But it was a pity that these mines were only single-use items. Not only were there many restrictions that must be followed when refining them, it was also troublesome as well. It was only refinable by cultivators who could control lightning attribute spirit power. As a result, Zenith Yin and the Bone Sage had never been able to refine these items. When Han Li first saw the Yinfire lightning refinement method, he didn't pay much attention to it. He was able to control divine Devilbane lightning, but he swept past it since he only wished for secret techniques that were easy to learn, such as the Yin Devil execution. But now that this troubling azure flame had appeared before him, he recalled the refinement technique for the Yinfire lightnings. Originally, refining the Yinfire lightnings required a large quantity of spiritual power, and the rate of success wouldn't be large either. Also, there were sparsely few cultivators capable of controlling lightning, and these weapons were short-lived as they were consumables. Although Han Li couldn't use the profound Yin arts, he no longer needed to strictly follow the Yinfire lightning refinement technique with his current knowledge and cultivation. He simply needed to alter the refinement method to make sure of the azure flames in order to refine them. And since the azure flames were no less than the purple apex flames, they would be no less powerful than the Yinfire lightnings that were originally described. In the past, he had thoughts of using the celestial ice flames or even the purple apex flames to refine the mines. But because the two flames were too difficult to refine, and he lacked the amount needed to face enemies, he didn't dare to squander them on this idea and tossed the matter to the back of his head. Now that he had the azure flames, which he could neither store nor refine, he could now put his plan into action. This way, he would have another devastating weapon to use in the incoming war. With that thought, Han Li took a look at the other items in his storage pouch. Han Li was eventually able to find the materials needed to refine the lightning beads. These items weren't rare in the least. They were all common materials used to refine tools and pills. After taking out all these items once by one and arranging them in front of him, he faced the flickering fireball and he raised his hands with a grave expression. With a series of rumbles, two arcs of lightning shot out from his palms, striking the azure fireball. In the main hall of the Drifting Cloud Sect encampment, Lu Luo was motionlessly sitting in his chair without a trace of emotion. There were several Drifting Cloud Sect core formation disciples standing in front of him, the red-clothed cultivator Song among them. They all appeared somewhat apprehensive. Lu Luo calmly asked, "Martial Nephew Duan, your martial uncle Han still hasn't left seclusion after these many days." Reporting, Martial Uncle Han has remained in seclusion for 2 months. Junior Martial Sister Song and I have been guarding his room since the very beginning. He had yet to leave. Lu Luo sighed and muttered, "When your martial uncle Han entered seclusion, he had already told me that he had to make preparations for the coming war and wished that we wouldn't bother him during his seclusion. However, the Mulan have just about finished gathering together and are about to move. There is a meeting being held amongst the high-grade cultivators, and they want your martial uncle Han to attend." It used this as a reason to delay the meeting, but now that the 3 great cultivators had arrived at Skyfir City, they sent a request for Han Li to attend it. Since this is a meeting that only mid-nascent soul cultivators can attend, this clearly illustrates your martial uncle Han's importance to them. We can't push this off any longer. Furthermore, I reckon that this meeting will decide the final decisions for the battle. If someone from our sect were to attend, it would bring great benefits. Having heard Martial Uncle Lu, the other cultivators in the hall wore a bitter smile. After a moment of hesitation, Cultivator Song worriedly said, "However, Martial Uncle Han is certain to be at a crucial moment of his seclusion. If we were to rashly disturb him, wouldn't we spoil his efforts?" The middle-aged cultivator with a long, thin mustache also appeared hesitant and said, "Even if there are some apprehensions, Martial Uncle Lu can no longer delay the matter. The meeting is being held tomorrow. If Martial Uncle Han doesn't come..." "What's going on, everyone?" At that moment, a soft voice was clearly heard throughout the hall. When Lu Luo heard this, he wore a face of delight. Soon after those words echoed through the hall, Han Li suddenly appeared at the entrance wearing a calm expression. Just as the core formation cultivators bowed towards Han Li, Lu Luo stood up with a smile. "Junior Martial Brother Han, you've finally left seclusion. This is great." Han Li smiled and said, "I wasn't completely finished. I planned on continuing my seclusion, but I felt worried about the matter of the Mulan and thought I'd take a look. It seems I've arrived at just the right time." It seems Junior Martial Brother Han has also heard our martial nephews. There had been many people that had wished to see you recently. There isn't much to say about the others, but the three great cultivators personally invited you to attend a high-echelon meeting. Junior Marshal Brother Han, you must participate in it. Our Drifting Cloud sect had mustered a majority of its power, and I don't wish for our sect's disciples to die in the masses. Junior Marshal Brother Han must go and listen to how they've made arrangements in the war and put my worries to ease. Once Lu Luo finished speaking, he wore a solemn expression. Yes, since I now know of this matter, I will be certain to pay them a visit tomorrow. I've long wished to speak with the three great cultivators. I am looking forward to seeing them tomorrow. Han Li's reply was much to Lu Luo's satisfaction, and they chatted about what had happened in the past 2 months. Han Li frowned upon hearing Lu Luo's words. The spell warriors have begun to attack the border fortresses. Lu Luo's smile faded away and he said with a deep tone, "That's right. To tell the truth, this had only started in the past 4 days. Although this hadn't caused many deaths, it is a sign that the Mulan had already finished their preparations." Han Li blinked and slowly said, "The Mulan had prepared themselves so quickly. How well have our forces made arrangements? Surely they must have made much progress." Lu Luo explained, "Our circumstances greatly differ from the Mulan. Although the Mulan spell warriors had joined together their tribes and are not wholly united, their tribes aren't as varied or numerous as the sects in the heavenly south. It has proven difficult to have these various sects to join together in spite of the differences in technique, power, and wealth, much more difficult in comparison to the Mulan. Not to mention that the Mulan had spent nearly a century preparing for this invasion. Our current preparations are simply lacking, but fortunately, the 4 superpowers have wholeheartedly committed themselves to the war. There is a chance at winning this war." Han Li stroked his nose and sullenly said, "According to what you've said, the war could start at any moment." Lu Luo sighed and helplessly said, "That's right. Why else would the three great cultivators quickly meet together and convene to hold a meeting of mid-nascent soul cultivators the next day? After all, mid-nascent soul cultivators are amongst the peak existences in the heavenly south." As the other cultivators in the hall listened to Han Li and Lu Luo chat, their expressions unconsciously grew solemn. However, Han Li soon turned to ask about the recent plans of the Drifting Cloud sect. The Drifting Cloud sect disciples all spoke in a flurry, each informing him of the several squads they formed and how they were holding day-long drops for group combat. Han Li simply nodded in silence. These types of arrangements were to be expected. Wars weren't something fought alone. Even immensely powerful couldn't withstand a barrage of attacks of thousands of trained cultivators. Of course, ordinarily, high-grade cultivators wouldn't find themselves in such dangerous positions. So long as they aren't surrounded by a squad of cultivators, these high-grade cultivators are able to use large-scale abilities to eliminate lower-grade cultivators in droves. As such, it was extremely crucial for enemy high-grade cultivators to be placed in check. This was true for both cultivators and spell warriors. In a battle between high-grade cultivators, whichever side lacked the forces to check the other was already bound to lose. As a result, Han Li asked about the Drifting Cloud sect's affairs, wondering what was the true reason the three great cultivators of the heavenly south was holding a meeting between mid-nascent soul sage cultivators. He reckoned that, in addition to the arrangement of the cultivator armies, the upcoming meeting would most likely include arrangements of how to deal with the Mulan sages. With that thought, Han Li couldn't help but coldly smile. In the last 2 months, not only did he eliminate the Azure Flame from all of his bamboo Cloudswarm swords, but he also used the divine Devilbane lightning to turn the Azure Flames into 8 lightning beads. When Han Li recalled his attempts to create the lightning beads, he couldn't help but wryly smile. His efforts were met with mostly failure. It had been a truly exquisite way to rid off the Azure Lantern flames. After a moment more of chatting, Han Li left the hall and returned to his assigned residence to hone his spirit. In the 2 months he spent unceasingly purging his swords of the Azure Flame and refining them into lightning beads. He had exhausted himself quite heavily. On the next morning, Han Li left the Drifting Cloud sect encampment and walked towards the heart of the city. He soon found himself looking a huge stone palace hall in the distance. Because the entirety of Skyforce City had been built as a rushed construction, even the main hall used to host meetings between the higher echelon of the 4 superpowers appeared quite ordinary and coarse. Apart from being larger than the Heavenly Tao Union's meeting hall, it had little else of note, apart from the several core formation cultivators standing guard in front of it. When they saw Han Li approach, they swept their spiritual sense past him and they immediately welcomed him. One of the core formation cultivators saluted him first and respectfully said, "Senior, Only mid-nascent soul stage cultivators are allowed to participate in the meeting today. May I ask? Here, without waiting for him to finish, Han Li waved his arm and flung a white jade slip over to him. It was the invitation that Han Li had received the day before. After the guard swept his spiritual sense into the jade slip, he apologetically said, "So it was Senior Han. This junior has been lacking in manners. Please go in." He then stood to the side and opened the door. Han Li smiled and thought to enter when his expression suddenly changed. His steps grew sluggish as he turned his head to look in the direction of a small street. There were two people slowly walking through it, a man and a woman. The man appeared to be only about 20 years of age, and he wore a rich embroidered robe. His skin was flawless, his face handsome, and every one of his movements smooth and elegant. However, this youth's gaze often glanced around, occasionally revealing vast changes in expression, and the wrinkles at the corner of his eyes suggested that his age was actually quite a bit older than his appearance suggested. But what was most strange of all was the soft and feminine aura that emitted from his body, as if he was actually a woman dressed as a man. It was rather strange. When Han Li saw this man, he felt his heart tremble and his face grew stern. This person was a mid-nascent soul cultivator, someone who should be participating in this meeting. From his demonic appearance, he should most likely be a devil Dao cultivator, but just what sect did he belong to? As these thoughts raced through Han Li's mind, his gaze turned to the woman that was closely following after him. He couldn't help but yelp in astonishment at the sight of her. The woman was young and beautiful, and she wore magnificent bright red robes. She carried a lithe grace as she walked forward. She had an indescribable allure to her that possessed endless beauty. But when Han Li saw her face, he wore an odd expression, but he soon replaced it with a wry smile. It was her Dongchuaner. There was no doubt about it. That youthful old eccentric was certain to be from the Harmonious Bond sect, the top sect in the Devil Dao. In the long years he hadn't seen her, Dongchuaner had risen to mid-core formation stage. It was rather surprising she had cultivated this far, given her poor aptitude. Han Li stood motionlessly at the hall's gate and examined their every action. Naturally, the core formation cultivators standing guard also saw the two. As a result, a majority of the cultivators' faces grew pale. One of them spoke with an uneasy tone. "I didn't expect that the Harmonious Bond sect's old devil Gu would actually come." Old devil Gu. When Han Li heard this, he suddenly recalled someone. It seemed in addition to their late nascent soul stage cultivator, they had one other famous eccentric. This person was endowed with a strange constitution. Both yin and yang was contained in his body, allowing him to cultivate the peak devil Dao techniques of the Harmonious Bond sect. An expert of appearance mending, he named himself Taoist Cloudpart, known to others as Old Devil Cloudpart. By cultivating some unknown technique, he had become overwhelmed with lust and would often go through the shady actions of seizing others and having his way with them. Be they handsome men or beautiful women, whenever someone caught his eye, they wouldn't be let go. As a result, he had offended many large sects. However, his cultivation was truly profound, and with the backing of the Harmonious Bond sect, none dared to retaliate. Additionally, those he seized would be released once he had his fun with them, as he wasn't particularly fond of killing. As a result, the sects of these victims could only conceal this matter and bear with it. With such a reputation in the cultivation world, people grew fearful at the very sight of him. When young cultivators heard of his reputation, they would flee from the sight of him without exception. Those who couldn't run would simply be left shaking in trepidation, fearing that they would draw his attention. Could it be this youth is the old eccentric? Although Han Li had nothing to fear from him, the man gave him a feeling of unease. Just as it so happened, the handsome youth had taken notice of Han Li, who was standing in front of the gate. He examined Han Li with narrowed eyes before smiling at him, faintly exuding a trace of seductive intent. When Han Li saw this, a cold chill shot up his back, but he forced himself to return the smile. But when Dong Xuaner spotted Han Li, she wore an expression of shock. The handsome man walked towards the hall as if he took no notice of this. As Devil Cloudpart continued, Han Li walked inside and disappeared from sight. When the youthful man saw this, his smile disappeared and he calmly asked Dong Xuaner, "What, do you recognize this person?" Your heartbeat quickened. She was an unruly woman that used her wiles to charm her fellow disciples in Yellow Maple Valley, and was paired with Han Li in Chapter 246 as a result, who was immune to her seductions. She was later captured in the Devil Dao invasion by the Harmonious Bond sect and joined them. Dong Xuaner's expression remained somewhat baffled at the sight of Han Li, but she calmly replied, That person was an old acquaintance of mine. Since I hadn't seen him for many years, his sudden appearance had surprised me. Old acquaintance. That early nascent soul cultivator is allowed to enter today's meeting, and going from his youthful appearance, he should be the recently famous Drifting Cloud sect elder. It is said he is surnamed Han, the same as the person you had mentioned before. Are they the same person? Old Devil Cloudpart wasn't angered by her stiff reply. Rather, he spoke calmly as if he had an unordinary relationship with the woman. Dong Chuaner's complexion turned somewhat pale at his words, but she remained silent. A cold glint flashed from Old Devil Cloudpart's eyes. While he did drop the matter with a cold snort, a slight frown appeared on his face. Cloudpart led her to the front of the palace hall and was promptly allowed in by the fearful core formation cultivators standing guard. Of course, Dong Chuaner wasn't allowed to enter. She was led to side room to rest for the time being. Not long after Han Li entered the palace hall, he soon saw the entrance of the meeting room and hurried inside. The meeting room was rather simply arranged. Apart from a few rows of huge stone pillars, there was a large empty space at its center with 17 exquisitely crafted wooden chairs placed several meters apart from one another. 8 cultivators were currently sitting amongst the chairs in various places. When Han Li entered, there were a few that indifferently glanced at him, a few that ignored him, as well as others that were currently meditating. They all acted without regard for any others. However, there was one person who kindly smiled at him when he entered. He beckoned to Han Li and said, "Fellow Taoist Han, you've emerged from seclusion. If you don't find it distasteful, how about you sit next to me?" This man was the leader of the Heavenly Tao Alliance, the Phoenix Cry sect's Long Han. "Many thanks, Brother Long." Han Li sat down at his side and began to silently examine the other cultivators in the room. A short moment later, Old Devil Cloudpart entered the room. He glanced at the others within and chuckled before boldly taking a seat in an empty chair. He sat down in the seat next to a blue-robed old man who was holding a white jade wine cup and a small emerald-green pot, drinking by himself. When Old Devil Cloudpart sat near him, his fragrant scent drifted towards Old Man, causing him to glare at Devil Cloudpart and curse his own luck. He paid no attention to the old man's dissatisfaction, instead glancing around him and examining Han Li with much interest, much to Han Li's unease. With a frown, he bluntly closed his eyes and remained expressionless. However, he was still pondering what relationship this old devil had with Dong Chuaner. In the past, Dong Chuaner had been stolen away by the Harmonious Bond sect's young master and joined the sect. Although this old devil's reputation was awful, he wouldn't prey on his own sect's disciples. The two must have some other relationship, else he wouldn't have brought Dong Chuaner along to the meeting. Just as Han Li mulled over this, a number of people entered the hall in succession. They were all mid-nascent soul cultivators, many of which were recognized by those already sitting in the hall. With a few hateful grudges between them, there were quite a few mocking statements said in passing amongst the greetings that were uttered. At that moment, Old Devil Cloudpart's gaze finally left Han Li, but Han Li remained still regardless. As he recognized none of the other cultivators in the room, he didn't need to greet them. "Fellow Taoist Shattered Soul, I didn't think that you would come. I heard that you had already cultivated your 9 souls technique to transformation stage. Congratulations." Shattered Soul. Han Li's heart stirred at the mention of this name, and he unconsciously opened his eyes. He saw an exceptionally shriveled, gray-robed old man being called by a black-robed cultivator in the hall in a familiar manner. When the gray-robed old man heard him, he walked over to the black-robed cultivator with a smile. Taking note of Han Li's action, Long Han smiled and asked, "What is it?" Fellow Taoist Han has seen Taoist Shattered Soul before. Having recalled slaughtering Shattered Soul's disciples on his recent trip to the state of Yue, Han Li calmly replied, "No. I simply heard Senior Marshal Brother Cheng mention him once before. I heard his abilities are quite vast." With another smile, Long Han said, This comes as no surprise. I recall that Elder Cheng had fought him once before and he had suffered quite the loss. It is natural that a deep impression had been left behind, but with fellow Taoist Han's current reputation, there is no need to fear him. However, there is one person amongst the mid-nascent soul cultivators that you had best avoid offending. Even the 3 great cultivators have a headache dealing with him." Han Li frowned and revealed shock. Someone that is able to cause a headache for even the 3 great cultivators. Such a person exists. Long Han carefully explained, "Of course there is. This person had fought fellow Taoist Sunreach of the three great cultivators and inflicted heavy injuries onto fellow Taoist Sunreach in order to escape. As such, he was known to be in existence on par to the three great cultivators. However, this cultivator often keeps to himself. Even with the invasion of the Mulan, it's hard to say whether or not he will come. It would be of great help if he did. Han Li pursed his lips and curiously asked, a cultivator able to injure a late nascent soul cultivator. It is no wonder why this person seems so exceptional. Could you tell me who he is? Continuing his smile, Long Han said, you should have heard of his name before. His name is Eccentric Heavenvenge. Han Li wryly smiled and said, Eccentric Heavenvenge. It is true, I have long heard of his vast reputation. He suddenly recalled what had happened when the sacred tree area was infiltrated. At the time, the righteous and devil Dao spies had been afraid to kill the low-grade cultivators out of fear that one of them may have been a descendant of Eccentric Heavenvenge. Han Li blinked and chuckled. However, it stands to mention that Brother Long and his wife are in existence equal to the three great cultivators as well. When Long Han heard this, he shook his head and flatly said, Feng Bing and I may hold some power, but we wouldn't be able to stand against them alone. Of course, when we are together, it is a completely different matter altogether. Han Li smiled and thought to speak of the matter when he felt someone's gaze on him. It was icy and filled with ill intent. Vigilance filled Han Li's mind as his expression froze. He then turned his head to look at the source of the glare, an unfamiliar green-clothed old man with a long beard. When the old man saw Han Li glance at him, he withdrew his gaze and expressionlessly turned his eyes elsewhere as if nothing had happened. However, this didn't cause Han Li to relax. Instead, he continued staring at the old man for a long while. Having seen what happened, Long Han asked with a smile, What? Does fellow Taoist Han not recognize this person? Feeling somewhat puzzled, Han Li replied, Brother Long seems to imply that I should know who he is. This person is the Grand Elder of the controlling spirit sect, Elder Dongmen II. He holds the most power in the sect. Although I hadn't spoken to this person before, I have heard his friendship with Gu Xiongpu was quite deep. While he might not say anything because of the irrefutable evidence that Gu Xiongpu was a Mulan spy, he is certain to be resentful at you for having killed him. You have best be careful. Han Li stroked his nose and wryly smiled before uttering a word of thanks. A mere quarter-hour later, most of the chairs in the room had been filled. There was quite a funny sight to behold at this point. Nearly all the devil Dao cultivators were sitting on the right side of the room, with most of the righteous Dao cultivators sitting on the left. As the Heavenly Dao Alliance and the Nine Nations Union cultivators, they casually sat on either side. Among these cultivators, Han Li found a familiar face, the Sailing Boundaries Sect's cultivator Quang. He was currently sitting on the devil Dao's side. When he saw Han Li look over at him, he smiled at Han Li, to which Han Li responded with a nod. At that moment, Long Han was giving Han Li an explanation on the two other Heavenly Dao cultivators through voice transmission. One of them was a plainly dressed woman with an ordinary appearance, with the other being an old man with a miserable appearance. Han Li glanced at the two and committed their appearances to memory. Perhaps due to the many people in the room, their expression began to turn grave, and they remained silent as they coldly examined one another. These cultivators were all peak existences in the Heavenly South, each of them from opposing factions and holding various intentions and thoughts of their own. Amongst these people, Han Li could be considered the most unusual. Han Li allowed the old eccentrics to sweep their powerful spiritual sense across Han Li's body. When they saw his comparatively shallow cultivation, they all figured out who he was. After all, Han Li's fame over the past half-year had reached the ears of all these old eccentrics. However, they simply saw him resting in his chair with his eyes closed. He appeared entirely calm in spite of current circumstances. Just as the room became silent and even somewhat grave, three people walked into the room one after another, instantly catching the attention of these old eccentrics. There was a large black-robed old man, a green-haired old man, and a cultivator with a sword on his back. Han Li's expression remained calm, but he felt his heart began to thump. These three were the three great cultivators of the Heavenly South, the only late nascent soul stage cultivators on the continent. They were all over 1,000 years old. With a few exceptions, a majority of the people present managed to retain their calm like Han Li and waited for the three to begin speaking. The three slowly walked towards the center of the hall and stood side by side. The large black-robed man with a sinister appearance spoke with a frigid tone, "You should all know who we are. There should be no need for introductions. This meeting will be presided by us three. Are there any objections?" Once he was finished, his body suddenly emitted a huge spiritual pressure, enveloping the entire room. When the cultivators in the room felt these profound spiritual chi fluctuations, their expressions changed one after another. Hanli felt a wave of astonishment from this person's amazing power. From his icy, demonic aura, he should be the old devil conquered. This old devil's appearance was different from what he had imagined. In fact, his appearance was more in line with a cultivator from the Ghost Spirit sect. Unbeknownst to Hanli, each successive generation of the Harmonious Bond sect Grand Elder was titled as the Old Devil Conquered. Although the large black-robed man cultivated a devilish technique that had little relation to the Harmonious Bond sect, he had no choice but to adopt the title. At that moment, the others sensed the fearsomeness of the large man. Although they felt somewhat ill at ease, none of them dared to foolishly challenge the authority of the three great cultivators. For a time, silence reigned in the entire room as if in tacit approval of Old Devil Conquered's previous words. The large black-robed man expressionlessly said, "Good, since there are no objections, there will be no need to speak any rubbish. To tell the truth, we do not have the time. This morning, the Mulan had sent an envoy delivering an official challenge of war. If we do not comply with their conditions, there will be a battle to death in 7 days." An uproar occurred within the hall. A challenge of war, 7 days, what conditions? The sword-bearing Taoist chuckled and calmly said, "Brother Yi's words are correct. Everyone should first look over the Mulan's challenge of war before we discuss a plan with how to deal with them. Although the war is coming earlier than we anticipated, with the abilities of everyone present, do we still have anything to fear from the Mulan?" Although his voice wasn't very loud, it was clearly heard by everyone in the room, leaving a calming chill on their hearts. The other cultivators felt alarmed by this sensation, but their uproar immediately ceased. Rather, there was someone who muttered, "Sure enough, great truth sect's meditative arts are the way to do it." The middle-aged Taoist ignored those contemptuous words and took out a glistening red jade slip before casually tossing it to an old man across from him. He smiled and said, "This contains the Mulan's challenge of war. How about fellow Taoists take a look?" The old man was startled, but he soon swept his spiritual sense into the jade slip. With a sudden change of expression, he gloomily handed it over to the person at his side. As a result, that person's expression also grew unsightly after curiously reading through it. As the war challenge was being passed through the various cultivators, Hanli shot an appraising glance at the sword-bearing, middle-aged Taoist and the azure-robed old man. The Taoist appeared to be about 40 years of age, but his skin was translucent and pure, and he had a face befitting of a scholar. He was the Righteous Tao Alliance's Great Truth Sect's Master Sunreach. As for the old man, he had a very ordinary appearance in plain clothes, revealing nothing particularly of note. But what caught Hanli's attention was the old man's long fingernails. They appeared exceptionally sharp and were purple-black, occasionally shining with a faint black light. This person should be the Nine Nations Union's Grand Elder Wei Wuya. When Wei Wuya sensed Hanli's gaze, he turned to look at him with a trace of surprise before smiling at him. Hanli awkwardly returned the smile, and he couldn't help but ponder whether or not he would still smile once he knew of what happened between him and Nangong Wan. Just as he pondered this, Longhan had already finished looking through the jade slip, and he passed it to Hanli with an unsightly expression. He grew quite curious, having seen many people react the same way, and promptly delved his spiritual sense into the jade slip. A short moment later, Hanli withdrew his spiritual sense with a frown, and silently handed it over to another cultivator. Not long after, everyone in the room read through the jade slip, each of them wearing an unsightly expression. Some of them even followed with a cold snort once they were done reading. The Great Truth Sect's Master Sunreach asked with a mysterious smile, "Having read through the war challenge, what does everyone think?" A green-robed man wearing a sinister expression coldly said, "They are rather arrogant to have us give them half of the heavenly South Continent. Do they believe victory is already certain?" A plump old man wore a sly expression and said, "That's right. Who was it that said we could end hostilities by merely ceding a few lands? They clearly don't understand that Mulan are merely hungering vultures. Perhaps we do not need to fight a decisive battle. If we stall them, they may slowly submit to attrition." A large tan man sitting at the plump old man's side angrily said, "Fellow Taoist Lu, what do you mean by that? Is it because your Thousand Illusions sect is deep within the heavenly South that you don't care whether the rest of our sects live? A war of attrition might mean little to your sect, but how about ours?" Without any fear of the large tan man, the plump old man indifferently said, I was considering others when I said it. Any fallen sects can re-establish themselves, but lives can't be easily replaced. Another person coldly said, Humph, you speak of the matter quite simply. If our countries were abandoned, for what reason would we block the Mulan armies on behalf of your devil Dao sects? We should simply move all of our sects into your state of Tianluo. That way, nobody will die. You. That's enough. We've already come to a conclusion of the matter of a war of attrition, and we won't discuss it further. Now we must discuss how to deal with the armies of the Mulan spell warriors, not fight amongst each other. The black-robed cultivator grew sullen having heard this and rebuked them. When the three heard devil conquered, they all wanted object, but they obediently obeyed and kept silent. In the cultivation world, strength spoke the loudest. Master Sunreach solemnly added, In truth, it isn't necessary for you three to discuss the matter. We've already come to a decision. With the momentum of the Mulan armies and interference from outsiders, a war of attrition is impossible. If we do not gather together a majority of the Heavenly South's power, we will be incapable of defending against the Mulan's attack. If only a single country's forces were to meet them, it would result in immediate defeat. Then when they are finished, they will most likely move on to the next of us. As a result, we must scatter the ranks of the Mulan in battle. We cannot rely on chance. A quick series of whispers interrupted the silence, only for it to quickly return. Soon, the controlling spirit sect's Dongman too shifted his gaze and asked, Why not have the Mulan to reveal whatever tricks are first up their sleeve? Why must we first risk having a wagered battle, and with such a heavy stake as well? There are materials that even we cannot put up on wager. Isn't there even more to be said about the destitute Mulan? Another cultivator then explained, We know of this well. The Mulan plains may be truly impoverished, but what they lack in common resources such as spirit stone mines, they are compensated by the rare materials located there. There are even a few rare materials that they possess in greater quantities than we do. Wearing a pensive expression, Dongman too slowly said, So it was like that. However, why is it that they are so confident of victory in this wagered battle? In addition to the late nascent soul cultivators, there are other cultivators that may join in this wagered as well. Up to 10 wagered battles, all to the death. Could it be that they believe that we will simply abide by these terms? Given the cunning of the characters in the room, they all knew the Mulan put forward this risky battle with some scheme or trick in mind. They couldn't help but ponder with unease. Han Li was also puzzled by this. The war challenge clearly stated that the proposed battle will have both sides send their own forces and make no use of any dirty-handed methods. Instead, the cultivators that battle will be able to directly wager their rare materials in battle, and the winner could directly seize the loser's storage pouch. What was particularly suspicious was that the war challenge also stated that these 10 wagered matches must be held simultaneously, and any cultivators that are defeated will be incapable of running. They will die on stage. For this reason, the wagered battles will be held in a sealed spatial barrier. This barrier will be guarded by people on both sides, preventing either side from tampering with the battle. However, regardless of any tricks the Mulan may hold, this will prove to be a great opportunity for us. If we are able to kill a few high-grade spell warriors before our armies fight, it will be of great benefit to us. Humph, I fear the Mulan holds the same intentions as you do. The hesitantly spoken statement was immediately rebuked. Old Man Quang of the Sailing Boundaries study disdainfully said, What is there to think about? If the Mulan wishes to hold a wagered battle, we don't need to accept. In 7 days, we will lay out our own arrangements. As a result, their plans will result in nothing. Master Sunreach sighed and helplessly said, Unfortunately, while Brother Quang's words are reasonable, we are required to participate in this wagered battle, and we must win. Old Man Quang frowned and discontentedly said, What? What does Master Sunreach mean? We cannot allow ourselves to be led by the nose by the Mulan. Many of the other eccentrics in the room nodded in agreement. Master Sunreach sullenly said, We are well aware that there is something suspicious about this, but the Mulan had captured many cultivators on their warpath, a majority of them being 9 Nations Union cultivators. And in the process of providing assistance, many of sect disciples have also been captured. The envoy stated that they have about 1,000 captives in total. In his alarm, Old Man Quang immediately asked, What did they say? Are they going to execute the captives if we do not agree to their conditions? Are the Mulan not afraid of our retaliation? Master Sunreach quickly replied, The envoy didn't state as such. However, he did speak of a chance to rescue these cultivators. In addition to the materials that were wagered for each of the 10 wagered battles, each battle will wager the freedom of 100 captive cultivators. The eccentrics in the hall looked at each other in dismay. 1,000 cultivators aren't particularly many, and they will most likely be low-grade cultivators. There wasn't a need to save them, but if someone were to propose to abandon them, they would become the butt of criticism. While these cultivators didn't personally care about these captives, they were the representatives of various sects and clans of all sizes. There were particularly many cultivators that were captured in an attempt to slow down the Mulan armies. If they didn't rescue them, the morale of their forces would plummet, and the low-grade cultivators would feel particularly disappointed, and few of them would fight with all of their strength. The other cultivators inwardly swore at the Mulan for their cunning. Longhan agreed with a sigh. Who would thought these grassland savages would be able to act so cleverly? They hardly used any strategy in their previous invasions, but now they act with complete guile. We can't help but feel somewhat uneasy at this sudden change. Master Sunreach swept his gaze across the room and solemnly said, "It seems that everyone realizes that this battle is something that we cannot refuse. Regardless of what they are planning, we must defeat the spell warriors in this battle, else it will strike at our morale. Moreover, this wagered battle seems to lack any tricks. They most likely hold other intentions. As a result, you fellow Taoists need not worry about suffering any unexpected mishaps. If you have any doubts, we'll personally put a stop to these battles. Of course, since this is a battle to the death, we will not force anyone to join. This is voluntary." When the eccentrics heard this, they coldly smiled and their eyes glinted as they remained silent. Nobody was so foolish to accept. Even if there was nothing suspicious about these wagered battles, there were none wished to fight to the death. After all, one had to strenuously cultivate for several hundreds of years in order to reach this current stage of cultivation. They wouldn't easily expose oneself to danger. Hanli also remained silent. Although he didn't mind exerting a bit of strength to fight in the war, he didn't wish to brave any unnecessary risks. In that last battle at the Yellow Dragon Mountains, he had nearly lost his life. He didn't wish to relive the experience. Old Devil Conquered grew sullen at everyone's silence and coldly snorted. The bone-chilling sound caused the seated cultivators to feel a chill down their back. However, these cultivators still decided to remain silent. Master Sunreach shook his head at the sight and also revealed a trace of helplessness. Wei Wuya also narrowed his eyes and said not a word. Master Sunreach didn't allow this awkward silence to continue and said, "Before we arrived, we had a bit of a discussion. Since these wagered battles will prove dangerous, we have decided that any of the spoils gained from these battles will belong solely to the victor. Doesn't this somewhat make up for the danger? To the best of my knowledge, you fellow Taoists should be lacking some rare materials that you've been unable to find. We have some in our collection that we are able to persuade you with." Once this was said, his gaze swept past the room once more and his gaze stopped upon Hanli. Hanli felt his heart tremble and he felt somewhat puzzled. The other cultivators in the room felt the same. Although the sword-bearing Taoist had mentioned some alluring conditions, much to the temptations to those present, none took the initiative to step forward and participate in the wagered battle. But at that moment, Wei Wuya suddenly turned his head towards Taoist's shattered soul and began to send him a voice transmission. The despondent Taoist's shattered soul suddenly sat straight and wore an expression of delight. He then began to silently move his lips and converse with Wei Wuya through voice transmission. A short moment later, Taoist's shattered soul's expression wavered with hesitation. At that same moment, Devil Conquered began to send a voice transmission. Devil Cloudpart appeared completely aloof since he had entered the hall, but when he heard his sect's Grand Elder's voice transmission, he immediately frowned with a gloomy expression. It was unknown what was said to him. After a moment of thought, Taoist's shattered soul eventually said, "Fine, so long as you uphold what was agreed, I don't mind braving danger just this once." When the others heard this, they were absolutely stunned. Then Devil Cloudpart said, "Since fellow Taoist's shattered soul is participating, I will go as well. It would be truly unfortunate if these rare materials were lost to me." The old devil coldly smiled, but a trace of anger could faintly be seen from his face. The other cultivators glanced at each other. Although they didn't say anything, they were deeply startled. Regardless of what had convinced the two, it caused all the others to feel ill at ease. As expected, the three great cultivators each began to send voice transmissions to cultivators in the hall one after another. Most of these cultivators would happily or worriedly agree to fight in the wagered in the battle. There were only two that coldly shook their head and refused. When Han Li saw this, various thoughts began to swirl through his mind. But at that moment, Master Sunreach's voice had reached his ear. "Fellow Taoist Han, I heard that you were currently searching for a large quantity of auric essence. Is this true?" When Han Li heard this, he felt his heart pound. It was no surprise that he knew of this. His request of the Heavenly Tao Alliance's search for auric essence wasn't a secret affair. After calming his heart, Han Li said, "That's right. I require some auric essence in order to refine my magic treasure. Could it be that fellow Taoist Sunreach has a large amount of it?" Master Sunreach chuckled with a grin. "Fellow Taoist Han guessed correctly. Fellow Taoist Wei and I have each acquired a large chunk of auric essence. Its quantity should be enough for fellow Taoist to use. Are you interested?" After pondering to himself for a moment, he noncommittedly replied, "I would like to first see if the auric essence is to my satisfaction before I consider fighting." Master Sunreach agreed with a smile. In such a brief amount of time, 5 cultivators had agreed to fight. They were all like Han Li. It was only after some thought that they readily agreed. But even as hesitant as they were, their responses were to Master Sunreach's satisfaction. He then promptly ceased his voice transmissions and began to make arrangements with how the Mulan armies should be dealt with. In spite of the clamor of the eccentric speaking of how to make use of spell formation tools and deal with the troublesome spirit technique formations of the Mulan, Han Li's mind had already wandered off as he pondered about the auric essence. To tell the truth, Han Li had been dissatisfied with the might of the bamboo cloudswarm swords. It wasn't that his flying swords were inferior to the might of his fellow cultivators, but rather they were too weak in the face of the enemies that he had encountered. If he faced weak opponents, he wouldn't have to use them. He would use the Azure Essence sword streaks to deal with them. But against towering opponents, his flying swords would prove quite meager. With the Azure Essence Sword Art's last recorded divine ability, the Aureate Sword Formation, Han Li's bamboo cloudsword swords would be able to contend against a late nascent soul cultivator for some time, even if he could only muster a small portion of its complete power. As for the Heaven Void Cauldron, he hadn't personally witnessed any of its actual power. As he only heard endless praise of it from Silvermoon, he started to grow doubtful of it. Because the Aureate Sword Formation was a great divine ability that would allow him to establish himself in the cultivation world, he needed to acquire a large quantity of it in order to make use of the formation. However, Han Li felt uncertain about participating in the wagered match for it. With some thought, he decided to first see how much auric essence was being offered before de-icing. If it was enough auric essence for him to refine the Aureate Formation, he may find himself agreeing. So long as his opponent wasn't one of the Mulan divine sages, he felt he had nothing to fear. Even if the Mulan were to engage in any trickery during the wagered battles, he would be able to escape the trifling barrier with his thunderstorm wings and his purple apex flames. With this thought over, Han Li felt calm once more and began to listen to what was being planned. This meeting was held for nearly 2 hours under the guidance of Master Sunreach. While Old Devil Conquered occasionally added a few words in, Wei Wuya remained completely silent on the matter. Something worthy of note was how both Master Sunreach and Devil Conquered had highly valued Long Han. Whenever a matter related to the Heavenly Tao Alliance came up, they had always asked for his opinion. It appeared to be true that Long Han was able to contend against the 3 great cultivators together with his wife. Just as the discussion was about to come to a close, the cultivators who weren't participating in the wagered battle were given a few specific duties. Afterwards, Master Sunreach called the end of the meeting and bid everyone farewell, wishing them to properly prepare for what was to come. However, there were still 3 cultivators that hadn't left, one of them being Han Li. As for the other 2, they were Devil Cloudpart and a gorgeous woman with a bloodless complexion. The woman had remained silent in the previous discussion as Han Li did. Once most of the others left, Devil Conquered expressionlessly said, "Junior Marshal Brother, follow me. There is something I must say to you alone." He then walked out of the hall without turning back. Devil Cloudpart's gaze wandered for a moment and silently followed him after some hesitation. It seemed he greatly feared the large black-robed man. Master Sunreach waited until the Devil Conquered and Devil Cloudpart departed before facing Han Li and the pale woman. "Fellow Taoist Han and Bai, let's have a proper chat. How about you first take a look at the items you want and then decide whether or not you'll be participating in the wagered battles. This humble Taoist understands your reasoning. After all, this matter will be extremely dangerous. If there isn't a proper reward, no one would take the risk. But regardless if these items are to your satisfaction, I hope you 2 fellow Taoists will be participating in the wagered battles." Wei Wuya simply stood to the side and held his hands behind his back. He was calmly examining the two. When they heard Master Sun reach, Han Li didn't reply. Rather, the gorgeous pale woman frowned and said, "I am a woman who treads the solitary path. I do not care whether the Mulan invades the heavenly south or the other way around. Were it not for your message speaking of this item, I wouldn't have emerged from seclusion. Let's get the ugly matters out of the way first. If what you have is not to my satisfaction, I will leave without reservations." Master Sunreach wasn't angered at her cold words, and instead replied with a warm tone, "Fellow Taoist Bai, there is no need for this. Although I was somewhat mistaken for what happened in the past, in truth I was doing what was best for you." The woman's expression sank and she coldly snorted, "I am the judge of whether or not it was mistaken. Enough of the past, bring out the item." When Han Li heard this, he felt shocked despite his calm exterior. This woman surnamed Bai seemed to have a dispute of some sort, perhaps due to a past relationship. When Master Sunreach saw the woman's angered expression, he could only helplessly shake his head and took out a white jade box from his storage pouch. It appeared rather ordinary, as if made of common materials, but in the instant it appeared, the entire room dropped in temperature as if they were in the dead of a harsh winter. Even Han Li, who had long grown unfazed by weather, couldn't help but feel unwell in the face of such cold. The woman surnamed Bai revealed excitement, upon sensing the icy cold that the box emitted. At that moment, Master Sunreach wordlessly offered the jade box to the woman. After she took it into her hands, she opened it, revealing it clearly to Han Li. They were a pair of transparent crystalline cocoons. They emitted a trace of cold chi that caused Han Li to frown. They seemed to be cocoons of the ice frost silkworms, who were ranked last on the list of exotic insects. Although this exotic insect wasn't very powerful in battle, it has an inconceivable divine ability that is difficult to find. If this woman truly required these insects, it was quite possible she would agree to fight in the wagered battle. Why are they cocoons? These aren't fully grown. To Han Li's surprise, the woman's expression turned unsightly upon seeing them. Master Sunreach replied with a calm expression, "Fellow Taoist Bai, these ice frost silkworms were found 100 meters deep inside a sheet of ice. They aren't common, they are top-grade monarch silkworms. Look at them with your spiritual sense. You'll find that there is something exceptional about them." Monarch silkworms. The woman's expression stirred, and she doubtfully swept her spiritual sense past the cocoons. A short moment later, her expression relaxed. "How about it? While these monarch silkworms are still in their cocoons, they should be more than enough for your uses." After a moment of hesitation, the woman put away the box and said, "With this, I will be able to fight in the wagered battle." Master Sunreach sighed with relief and smiled. "Good. With fellow Taoist Bai's Frostcloud arts, she'll be able to deal with those trifling spell warriors in a single move." Afterwards, the woman expressionlessly said, "I'll be taking my leave," before heading out of the hall. Master Sunreach bitterly smiled and shook his head. When Wei Wuya saw this, he chuckled and said nothing else. Once the woman left the hall, Master Sunreach focused on Han Li and asked with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Han, just how much auric essence do you require?" With completely open intentions, Han Li said, "I require much of it. It can be said that the more the better. Of course, since auric essence is quite valuable, so long as you two fellow Taoists bring it to me, I'll exchange it for an equivalent price. I definitely won't have you suffer a loss." Master Sunreach chuckled. From fellow Taoist Han's tone, it seems he possesses quite a bit of wealth. However, fellow Taoist Han should know that at our realm, there are few items that are able to tempt fellow Taoist Wei and I otherwise. We wouldn't have relinquished so many of our worldly possessions for this war. Han Li smiled and said nothing else. Instead, Wei Wuya sighed and suddenly spoke. "Fellow Taoist Sunreach, your tone may be bold, but fellow Taoist Han was able to escape from a Mulan divine sage with only early nascent soul stage cultivation. He is no ordinary cultivator." Master Sunreach casually said, "He, I've been rude, but regardless of what fellow Taoist Han plans on using to trade for the auric essence, how about he first takes a look at it? If fellow Taoist truly has an item that can tempt us, we'll have no objections trading it for the entirety of the auric essence." He then reached for his storage pouch, and a white light flew into his palm, revealing 3 various-sized chunks of golden rock that magnificently glowed. The middle-aged Taoist handed them over to Han Li in one move. Han Li's heart pounded as he directly received the rocks, and he examined them with covetous desire. The 3 chunks, one large and 2 small, were truly auric essence. The larger of the pieces was about the same size as the chunk that was auctioned off at the trade meet, about the size of a walnut. As for the smaller pieces, they were about half that size. This amount of auric essence should be enough for him to infuse 10 some flying swords. However, it was somewhat lacking in quantity compared to what Han Li desired. Despite his calm expression, his eyes betrayed a trace of disappointment. Master Sunreach was somewhat amazed to see this. Just how much auric essence did this man want? It was rather baffling. With that thought, he shot a glance at Wei Wuya. Having seen Han Li's expression, he also glanced at Master Sunreach and calmly took out a fist-sized chunk of auric essence from his sleeve. When Han Li saw such a large chunk of auric essence in Wei Wuya's hand, he grew delighted. Although this chunk of auric essence wasn't enough for all 72 flying swords, with luck, this along with 3 smaller pieces should be enough for at least half of them. With 36 flying swords supported with the sword-light reflection technique, it would be just enough for a small-scale aureate sword formation. With excitement in his heart, Han Li caught the chunk of auric essence that Wei Wuya tossed to him. After examining it with a deep breath, he said, "Although this may be all of your auric essence, it is still somewhat lacking, but it will be enough for me to participate in the wagered battle. Please take a look at these items and see if they are to your satisfaction." After putting away the auric essence, he took out 2 differently colored jade boxes and handed them separately to Wei Wuya and Master Sunreach. They each took the jade boxes and indifferently opened them. Wei Wuya weighted the box in his hand before opening it first. One of the boxes had numerous scarlet fingernail-sized scales. The other box had a fist-sized jet-black tortoise shell. The 2 late nascent soul-stage cultivators were amazed by what they saw. "What's this?" "Demon beast materials." And Li explained, "That's correct. Fellow Taoist Wei has the scales of a grade 8 venomous flood dragon. As for fellow Taoist Sunreach, he possesses the shell of a grade 8 demon tortoise. Although I don't dare to say these items are heaven-defying existences, these metamorphosed demon materials are rarely seen in the heavenly south. They should be more than enough to trade for auric essence." Although Han Li's tone was calm, he held much confidence. Grade 8 demon beast materials were extremely hard to come by even in the scattered star seas. Although many cultivators head out to the outer star seas, very few were able to see demon beasts of that grade, let alone kill one. And in the heavenly south, grade 7 and 6 demon beasts were killed as quickly as they appeared. None are left to ascent to grade 8 stage. And apart from a few areas that large sects control, all other areas are devoid of any high-grade demon beasts. Although Master Sunreach was able to quickly recover from his shock, Wei Wuya couldn't help but shout in delight. The scales of a grade 8 venomous flood dragon. Han Li was stunned for a moment before soon recalling that Wei Wuya cultivated a venomous cultivation art. As the body of a venomous flood dragon is particularly deadly, these scales might prove to have other miraculous uses for him. Just as Han Li hesitated as to what to say, Wei Wuya hastily extended his fingers and fiddled with one of the crimson scales. After carefully examining them, he began to ponder what there was to gain. Master Sunreach felt somewhat amazed by Wei Wuya's loss of demeanor, but after a strange expression appeared on his face, he smiled at Han Li and said, "He. It seems fellow Taoist Han's item is much to Brother Wei's liking. I'm also rather interested in the tortoise shell. If these are true grade 8 demon beast materials, they will be a fair trade for the auric essence as they are optimal materials for refining defensive magic tools." Although he felt that Han Li's words weren't false, the sword-bearing Taoist found it hard to believe that an early nascent soul cultivator was able to acquire grade 8 demon beast materials. He naturally had to determine whether or not the tortoise shell was genuine. Just as Han Li pondered, he heard a long sigh from Wei Wuya. Wei Wuya put away the jade box in a flash of light and happily said, "Not bad. It is truly the scales of a metamorphosed venomous flood dragon. This is very suitable for me. There is hope that my magic treasure will ascend to a whole new level." Afterwards, he raised his head to shot Han Li an appraising look. "To tell the truth, it is truly surprising to me that fellow Taoist was able to produce such rare treasures. These venomous flood dragon scales are particularly important to me. Although all we've done is trade for what we've needed, fellow Taoist Han still must participate in the wagered battle on behalf of the heavenly south. How about this? I still have one last piece of auric essence. I originally planned to give it to my descendants, but since fellow Taoist Han requires it, I will give it to you. This way, I won't be accused of taking advantage of you." With a flip of his hand, he summoned an egg-sized piece of auric essence and tossed it to Han Li. With the addition of this piece of auric essence, he would have more than enough to temper the 36 flying swords. His goals to taking out such rare materials had been achieved. It could be said these grade 8 demon materials proved slightly more valuable than that of the auric essence. If they were to take the materials and still have him fight in the wagered battle without further compensation, it would be rather unreasonable. Of course, their intentions of acting so generously towards Han Li was obvious. As a nascent soul cultivator, he could simply pretend to agree and flee after taking the auric essence. If this were only a common trade that didn't involve the wagered battle, they wouldn't be able to do much else apart from complain. At that moment, Master Sunreach finished appraising the item, and he wore a slight smile on his face. It seemed he was quite satisfied with the tortoise shell. However, when he saw Wei Wuya give him another piece of auric essence, he hesitantly muttered to himself for a moment before bringing out a 6-inch-long yellow rootstock that was as thick as a thumb. Master Sunreach solemnly said, "From the wood attribute spiritual chi that is overflowing from your body, I believe that fellow Taoist's main cultivation art is wood-tributed. I have nothing appropriate to give you, so I can only present to you a small piece of rootstock from an ancient rattan palm. It will be greatly useful regardless of whether you refine it into a magic tool or use it to nourish your body's wood attribute spiritual chi. It should be enough to compensate you for the grade 8 demon tortoise shell." Wei Wuya revealed an expression of astonishment when he saw this item. "Yi, that is." Han Li was initially disappointed, but when he saw Wei Wuya's change of expression, his mind stirred in thought. An ancient rattan palm. Could it be that profound goddess palm that the righteous and devil Tao wished to resurrect with the spirit root tree's wine nectar? Han Li glanced at the item in his hand with astonishment. Master Sunreach wasn't surprised to see that Wei Wuya recognized this item. He calmly said, "With Brother Han's status, he should know of the profound goddess palm that appeared in this world. It is a pity that despite our efforts, we were unable to bring it back to life. In the end, we were only able to divide up the pieces of the rattan palm with the devil Tao and treat it as tool refinement materials. This is 1/4 of the palm's rootstock." The profound goddess palm. Han Li caught the yellow rootstock and muttered to himself with surprise. Han Li learned of the profound goddess palm from several ancient records. He now realized why the righteous and devil Tao had schemed to resurrect it. Immortal rattan palms were only a general classifier for these plants. They were merely a vine-type spiritual root that were useful. However, the profound goddess palm was different. Only a few such ancient rattan palms had the qualifications to be named as profound. Profound rattan vines belonged to a completely different realm and came into creation during times of antiquity. As such, any fruits or flowers it may produce possessed inconceivable effects that were truly heaven-defying. However, the profound goddess palm were one of such roots that possessed amazing effects, but as it had perished long ago, its husk was indistinguishable from other rattan palms. Were it not for the explanation that was left behind in the ancient cultivator burrow where it was found, it would have been assumed to be an ordinary rattan palm husk. At the start, it was believed to be a precious treasure. Even the righteous and devil Tao has fought several times for the possession of the treasure. Later on, the higher echelon of the righteous and the devil Tao decided to first see whether or not the immortal rattan was able of being resurrected. After all, even if it was resurrected, it could take tens of thousands of years before it would bear fruit or flowers. As a result, they first tried several different methods in their attempts to bring it back to life, and they later used spirit water and milk to water it. They even used wine nectar from the spirit root tree of the Dreamcloud Mountains. However, all these efforts were in vain as the immortal rattan showed no sign of coming back to life. With dashed hopes, the devil and righteous Tao decided to divide the stalk and branches into tensome pieces and even divide them between each party. As for how Master Sunreach acquired a piece of the rootstock, it was offered as tribute in an attempt to curry favor with him, the Grand Elder of the Righteous Tao Alliance. As for how Wei Wuya recognized it, he also had a section of the immortal rattan, but it was only a small portion of its branch. Through a series of trades, it had eventually made its way into Wei Wuya's hands. Since the pieces of the profound goddess palm couldn't be resurrected, they could only be used as top-grade materials at best, greatly decreasing its value in Master Sunreach's point of view. Additionally, since it was a wood attribute material and wasn't well suited for his own cultivation arts, he gave it to Han Li without much consideration. Wei Wuya soon realized what Master Sunreach also thought, and his surprise soon disappeared. Although he knew of the origins of the rattan rootstock, Han Li only felt slight disappointment. He currently had no lack of top-grade tool refinement materials. He only desired to acquire more auric essence, and it was for that reason that he took out the grade 8 demon materials. Since he didn't have the time to nurture his bamboo cloudswarm swords nor the spiritual power to refine a new magic treasure, it was currently better for him to receive ancient treasures instead if auric essence was out of the question. But since Master Sunreach truly didn't possess any auric essence, he offered the rootstock of the profound goddess palm, something that was also quite precious. As a result, Han Li simply took the box without another word and peered inside of it. His current plan for it was to make use of the small green bottle when he returned to his cave residence and attempt to mature the rattan palm. The green liquid born from the small mysterious bottle was unfathomable and was even able to mature the 3 divine trees. Perhaps it would be able to create a miracle of reviving the profound goddess palm. Although the chances were small, it would be an enormous windfall if it succeeded. As a result, his initial disappointment faded away. Golden lightning bamboo acquired from violet spirit, soul nurturing tree acquired from Heaven Void Hall in Yuan Yao, and the spirit well tree, Dreamcloud Mountains. Before Wei Wuya and Master Sunreach further spoke, Han Li sighed and tactfully said, "Since I've acquired the auric essence, I will naturally participate in the wagered battles in 7 days. Since the hour is late, I will be returning first. I must make preparations for the coming war." Master Sunreach smiled and politely said, "I didn't think that fellow Taoist Han would be such an impatient character. The war is important, so it is only natural to want to prepare yourself. We won't keep you here any longer." And Li promptly nodded and saluted them before quickly heading to the hall's exit. But before Han Li could make his way outside, Wei Wuya stared at him with a strange expression and moved his lips, sending a series of voice transmissions towards him. "Fellow Taoist Han, on behalf of these venomous flood dragon scales, I will overlook the matter of you stealing away fellow Taoist Nangong. As it wasn't meant to be between Fairy Nangong and my nephew, there was nothing that could be done." When Han Li heard this, he couldn't help but stop in his tracks. He then felt a wave of delight and quickly walked out the hall without turning around. Once Han Li could no longer be seen, Master Sunreach and Wei Wuya glanced at each other in silence. A short moment later, Master Sunreach slowly said, "What do you think? I found it truly inconceivable Han Li would actually bring out grade 8 demon beast materials. Could it be in the time he disappeared through the ancient transportation formation, he acquired the complete legacy of an ancient cultivator? How else was he able to reach early nascent soul stage in such a short amount of time, not to mention the many treasures he possesses?" Wei Wuya wryly smiled. "It is possible, but this has little to do with us. He is not the only person that has inherited ancient cultivation arts and ancient treasures. Having such a rare chance is a truly envious matter. Don't tell me you're thinking about killing him to take his treasures." Master Sunreach chuckled and shook his head. "Kill him? Brother Wei can sure tell a joke. Let alone during a time of war, this can't be done during peacetime either. Based solely on his ability to escape a Mulan divine sage, I'd be stirring up trouble without reaping any gains. Besides, his treasures may be precious, but would they allow me to break through to deity transformation stage? Besides, the Heavenly Tao Union and those pair cultivators aren't easily trifled with." As Wei Wuya and Master Sunreach remained behind and had a casual discussion about Han Li, the person in question had already arrived outside. To his surprise, Han Li caught sight of Dong Xuan'er. The woman was standing outside the hall with a lowered head, as if she were thinking about something. The cultivator's standing guard had ignored her since she had arrived with Devil Cloudpart. When she saw Han Li arrive, it stirred a reaction from Dong Xuan'er. She wore an odd expression on her face and appeared to be at a loss. A trace of resentment could also be faintly made out. Han Li felt somewhat bewildered and couldn't make much sense of the matter. Regardless, Han Li promptly walked past her as if he hadn't seen her and slowly walked towards the distant street. She simply stood in place, biting her lips, and watched Han Li in silence as he left. After making a turn, he sensed her gaze had left him, and he shook his head with a frown. Silvermoon's puzzled voice echoed from the back of his mind. "Master, you recognize that female cultivator?" Han Li casually replied, "She was an old acquaintance, but our relationship couldn't be considered good." "Is that so? From her expression, it appeared your relationship with her was unordinary. Could it be Master once?" Silvermoon smiled and deliberately trailed off. "Enough nonsense. I have a poor impression of the woman, and we were even once enemies." Han Li grew annoyed and coldly snorted. Silvermoon wryly smiled in response and tactfully kept silent. Ever since Han Li saved Silvermoon and remained silent on the matter of the purple cloud lace and the ancient flower basket being seized, Silvermoon grew far more intimate with Han Li. Although she didn't dare to be too imprudent with him, she spoke far more openly with Han Li. Of course, he also sensed this and felt more trustful with her in turn, resulting in a much closer relationship between the two. After returning back to the Drifting Cloud Sect encampment, Han Li had a quick discussion with Lu Luo about the meeting. Lu Luo wore a worried expression. There is no need for Junior Martial Brother to risk participating in the wagered battle. It is true that auric essence is rare, but you only has one life to lose. This is far from good. Han Li smiled and carelessly said, Senior Martial Brother Lu, please relax. I'm confident that I'll make it through the battle in one piece. Why else would I have agreed so quickly? However, I won't be able to pay much mind to the safety of our sect disciples before the battle. Senior Martial Brother Lu will have to look after them alone. Having heard Han Li, Lu Luo wore a relaxed expression. In the battle next week, I will naturally look after the sect disciples. Please don't worry about them. Since Junior Martial Brother is confident in the wagered battle, I won't speak further of it. However, I must ask if there is anything that you would like any sect disciples to perform. Han Li smiled. After a moment of thought, Han Li slowly said, For the coming battle, I will need to perform a few preparations. There are a few particular materials that I'll need my junior martial nephews to gather for me. Han Li bluntly took out a jade slip he had already prepared and handed it over to Lu Luo. Lu Luo took the jade slip and resolutely said, Rest assured. So long as they can be found in Skyforce City, I will have these materials gathered for you. Warmed by his words, Han Li nodded and chatted a bit before taking his leave. The jade slip that he gave Lu Luo detailed the supplementary materials for the spirit subjugation talisman. On the way back to the encampment, he had came to a conclusion that, while he should have no problem with the wagered battle given his current abilities, he always felt it best to tread with caution, and that he should make what preparations he could, the spirit subjugation talisman being one of them. In the Umbra realm, he received the talisman refinement method for a grand talisman, Chapter 591. It would be the soul-killing move that he would be able to prepare within several days' time. His only worry was the odds of success for refining it. As for tempering his flying swords with auric essence and cultivating the aureate sword formation, that wasn't something that could be accomplished in a sparse few days. He originally thought to find a satisfactory spirit talisman brush and have some more practice honing his talisman refinement techniques before attempting to create the spirit subjugation talisman. But now that he only had a few days, he had to make an attempt despite the lower chances of success. If he could successfully refine it, he would have another killing move. If he failed, nothing could be done about it. Any other preparations he could make over the next few days wouldn't be able to increase his strength. With that thought, Han Li calmly arrived at his assigned residence and entered his bedroom. He then sat cross-legged on his bed and closed his eyes. In a mere 2 days, Han Li had acquired all of the materials that he had requested. He was delighted and felt reassured of his decision to become a Drifting Cloud Sect elder. With these materials on hand, Han Li moved to a sealed room. After taking a seat cross-legged at the center of the room, he placed each of the materials in front of him and carefully opened a black-green bottle that he took out from his storage pouch. With a whoosh, a streak of crimson light shot out from the bottle. Already prepared, Han Li calmly raised his hand and grasped at the air. A large hand of azure light appeared soon after and grabbed the crimson ball of light. The azure light hand then pulsed with light and trembled, revealing the crimson light's true form. It was a crimson flood dragon that was several inches long. It continuously swiveled at the center of the palm and would occasionally attempt to escape, but the surrounding walls of azure light firmly trapped the flood dragon like a bird to a cage. Han Li narrowed his eyes and blue light shined from his pupils. He was able to instantly view every detail of the flood dragon's soul. It appeared lively and exactly the same as when he had captured it tens of years ago, but with his bright-sight spirit eyes, he was able to see something exceptional. Although the power of the flood dragon's soul still remained astonishingly strong, the light in its eyes had dulled. Clearly, its intelligence had waned. Now, the soul merely had power, but its mind was exactly the same as an unevolved flood dragon. Its attempts to escape were only born from instinct. And Li sighed and recalled the grade 8 venomous flood dragon and its immense abilities. It was now reduced to a feral soul only over the passage of tens of years. The contrast was so great that it nearly invoked pity. This led Han Li to be particularly mindful of immense challenges on the path of cultivation. If he were to one day lose his flesh body, and his primal soul fell into the hands of an enemy, he may find himself in the same situation as this venomous flood dragon. Han Li sat down in silence for a moment longer and sighed. With a shake of his hand, he had the Crimson Flood Dragon appear 3 meters above his head, remaining trapped in place within a barrier of azure light. Paying no further attention to the venomous Flood Dragon soul, Han Li lowered his head to look at the materials before him. He pointed to the emerald green hide of an unknown spirit beast and had it fly over towards him. With a bright glint from his eyes, he opened his mouth and spat out a sliver of azure nascent flame onto the spirit beast hide. Oddly enough, the flames didn't burn the spirit beast hide but enveloped it. And Li clutched both of his hands in an incantation gesture and began to continuously flick his fingers, striking the spirit beast hide with a barrage of spell seals. The nascent flame continuously flickered and pulsed with light. Han Li then ceased his casting incantation gestures and pointed his finger at a white jade box. The box flew over to him and opened to reveal a pile of sparkling silver powder. He flicked at the jade box, sending a small portion of the silver powder directly into the azure nascent flames, bringing forth silver embers within the flames. With further control from Han Li's incantation gestures, the flames drew the spirit beast hide to its center, transforming the hide into a huge silver lotus flower that slowly swiveled in the flames. Han Li's expression grew increasingly solemn and began to point to each of the containers in front of them. Various materials dazzlingly burned as they entered the fire. As they burned, the spirit beast hide turned silver to black, then black to green. Then when it turned crimson, Han Li breathed out and ceased pouring in the materials, and instead began to mutter. At the same time, several of his fingers trembled, shooting out several threads of slim azure light from his fingertips, directly striking the surface of the spirit beast hide. Now under the azure thread's control, the spirit beast hide ceased revolving and began to sway with a strange momentum. As Han Li continued his incantation, the spirit beast hide began to release slivers of black chi and shrink by a small amount. When the black chi touched the crimson nascent flame, they burned and released a faintly fishy scent in the air. Han Li seemed to ignore this and continued maintaining the flames for 2 hours. When the last sliver of black chi from the spirit beast hide had been refined, Han Li's expression finally relaxed and he sighed with relief. He tossed several more materials into the flame and had them burn for a moment more. Then, as Han Li's gaze flickered, the flames were suddenly extinguished with a pop, revealing a crimson spirit hide. At this moment, it was only the size of the palm of a hand. Han Li was satisfied to the chances to the spirit hide. He then pointed to the flood dragon soul above him without the slightest hesitation and had the barrier surrounding it scatter into specks of light. Then through some invisible force, it was sucked into the crimson spirit hide. With a puff, it disappeared without a trace. With the flood dragon's soul absorbed by the spirit hide, Han Li flipped his hand, summoning a sparkling blue talisman brush into his palm. It was 7 inches long and was exquisitely created. With his other hand, he beckoned to a blue jade box and summoned a ball of golden liquid from the case. Han Li quickly dipped the brush in the floating liquid, and his expression froze as he concentrated on the spirit hide. He then began to sweep his brush through the air with great familiarity. Series of cryptic golden talisman characters began to flow from the tip of the brush and directly bore into the spirit hide. Soon after, various talisman characters began to emerge above the spirit hide in orderly lines, each glistening with golden light. Just as these talisman characters began to appear, the spirit hide began to fiercely shake, emitting dragon roars from within. Protrusions then began to appear on the surface of it. Soon after, the crimson flood dragon emerged from the spirit hide and attempted to escape with all its might. But in that instant, the golden talisman characters on top of it brightly shined and contorted, tightly constricting the flood dragon's soul and dragging it back. Although the flood dragon's soul has lost its intelligence, it was still the soul of a worldly spirit beast. Its instincts detected danger and continuously attempted to break free of the golden talisman characters. At that moment, Han Li began to draw talisman characters with increased speed, and more golden talisman characters directly enveloped the flood dragon, quickly overpowering it and pushing it back into the spirit hide. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Han Li took out a bottle of purple liquid and dipped his brush in it. He then calmly began to write an odd symbol. Following that, Han Li exchanged the cinnabar he used to write with his brush as he continued to write talisman characters. Not long after, the spirit hide talisman paper flashed with dense bursts of various colored light as it soared with spiritual chi. Han Li's expression grew increasingly solemn, and his brush strokes started to slow, his eyes shining with blue light as he utilized the bright-side spirit eyes to their greatest extent. Just after a single crimson talisman character was drawn onto the spirit hide, a wave of increasingly frantic spiritual chi fluctuations suddenly emerged from the half-finished spirit talisman. Han Li's expression greatly changed as he began to inwardly curse. Without a further thought, he swept his sleeve, sending out a cloud of azure chi, instantly recalling all of the materials. At that same moment, he swept his other hand towards himself, summoning a small blue shield. It expanded in the blink of an eye and blocked his front. As Han Li finished all of this, the crimson spirit hide exploded, releasing deafening dragon roars. Rainbow light dazzlingly shined as a huge wave of astonishing spiritual chi struck the blue shield. Glowing with light, the large shield unwaveringly blocked the attack, somewhat to Han Li's surprise. He reckoned that due to the spirit talisman's immense power, the explosion that resulted from its failure would contain equivalently destructive force. It had been beyond his expectations for the attack to be so easily blocked. During Han Li's bewilderment, a streak of crimson light shot towards the ceiling of the sealed room in an attempt to escape. But just as the red streak touched the ceiling, a layer of white light blocked its way, causing it to rebound. Han Li was overjoyed at the sight of the flood dragon's soul and raised his hand without any further thought. He grabbed at the air, summoning a hand of azure light to emerge above the flood dragon's soul and grab it. He then pointed to the shield and had it quickly shrink with blue ripples of light before returning into his sleeve. Afterwards, Han Li again examined the recaptured flood dragon's soul with the bright-sight spirit eyes. Yi, Han Li yelped with astonishment. Although it still appeared to have the original soul, its strength was far weaker. The crimson flood dragon's soul also appeared listless. Han Li glanced at the flood dragon's soul and stroked his chin with a pensive expression. The failure to refine the spirit subjugation talisman hadn't resulted in the immediate destruction of the soul. It merely caused it to suffer a slight loss in strength. But in this case, he could make several attempts to create the talisman despite how difficult it may be to refine it. Of course, after each attempt, the soul would grow weaker, and the power of the spirit talisman was sure to decrease as well. After pondering this, Han Li sighed with relief. Even if the soul decreased in power, it may prove easier to refine if the flood dragon's soul was weakened. There was some fortune to be had from his failed talisman refinement. Han Li wryly smiled and began to take out another set of supplementary materials and exchange the spirit beast hide for a new one. He then set his mind of refining a new spirit beast hide. As Han Li painstakingly attempted to refine the spirit subjugation talisman over the span of 3 days, the entirety of Skyforce City began to mobilize. All sects and cultivators knew that there was about to be a great and decisive battle coming in a few days. After a period of disorder, the cultivators in the city began to leave their sect encampments and solemnly brought themselves to the assigned divisions of the cultivator army. They all knew that if they didn't win this battle and push back the Mulan, they would invade the heavenly south. It would bring about the end of countless sects and legacies. As a result, their morale was at their peak without any need to rally them. As for the 10 wagered battles, news of that had also quickly spread around. Out of fear that Mulan spies would leak the identity of the cultivators who would fight in the wagered battles, the names of those fighting were kept confidential. Apart from the eccentrics that participated in the meeting, no one would know of the 10 that would fight. Of course, the identity of these 10 nascent soul stage cultivators were of greatly discussed amongst many cultivators as well as their potential chances of winning. After all, the survival of about 1,000 cultivators depended on them. Those who had fellow sect members among the cultivators were particularly concerned over the matter. As for the Drifting Cloud sect disciples, they left Skyforce City along with the divisions they were assigned to, with the exception of Cultivator Song, who was ordered to stay behind and wait for Han Li. As for Lu Luo, he followed after the rest of the Drifting Cloud sect with lack of a better choice. Not long after, Skyforce City was empty apart for a sparse few cultivators standing guard. As a few more days passed by, Cultivator Song couldn't help but grow nervous. Han Li had yet to emerge, and she could faintly hear dragon cries and explosions coming from his heavily protected residence, much to her worry. On the 5th day, Cultivator Song decided that if her martial uncle Han didn't emerge from seclusion, she would have to summon the courage to force her way inside. If she waited another day, it was possible that they wouldn't make it to the battle. At that moment, Cultivator Song was sitting in the main hall of the sect encampment as worried weighed on her mind. She occasionally looked outside the hall and faintly saw the glow of the setting sun. Her expression wavered as the sky gradually grew darker. She then stood up and bit her lips with a frown. But before she could leave the hall, she heard a series of clear bell rings from outside. She soon wore an expression of delight. A short moment later, Han Li suddenly appeared in a flash of azure light. "I pay my respects to Martial Uncle Han." Cultivator Song quickly stepped forward and curtsied. "How many days has it been? Nearly all the cultivators in the city are gone." When Han Li emerged from the sealed room, he swept his spiritual sense past the city and discovered that there were only a few cultivators left. While he was in the room, he could only feel a loose passage of time. Although he felt that the scheduled date had yet to arrive, he felt it best to make certain. Feeling much more at ease, Cultivator Song respectfully replied, "Reporting to Senior, today is the 5th day." Han Li decisively said, "The 5th day. We have more than enough time, but it is better to be early. Let's go." "As you command." Han Li waved his hand, and a streak of white light flew out from his sleeve into the courtyard outside. The light faded away to reveal a winged white carriage, the wind riding chariot. Han Li's figure blurred and he reappeared inside. He turned to the woman and said, "Come in. It will be faster to travel in this than flying with light." Cultivator Song shot an appraising glance at the carriage and silently entered it with slight surprise on her face. Afterwards, Han Li lightly tapped his foot, causing the wind-riding chariot to glow and envelope itself in a layer of white light. Then, with a tremble, it shot through the skies. The wind-riding chariot was worthy of being a treasure specialized in flight. Not only did it consume a small amount of magic power, it flew far more quickly than an ordinary cultivator could. In the blink of an eye, they had already left Xianxia City. Cultivator Song was very relieved at the sight of this. She also couldn't help but wonder if this treasure was the reason why her martial Uncle Han appeared so relaxed. Did this unfathomable martial uncle of hers manage to cultivate some formidable secret in the last few days? Just what were those explosions and dragon roars coming from the room? Just as this woman pondered in silence and allowed her imagination to run wild, Han Li asked her a question, much to her surprise. "Is fellow Taoist Violet Spirit still where they previously were?" After a pause, Cultivator Song obediently replied. Violet Spirit and Mei Ning had decided to leave Xianxia City for the time being and decide what to do once the war is over. He, that girl Violet Spirit is rather clever. This was a truly wise decision. If I were in her shoes, I'd be doing the exact same. Soon after, he poured more spiritual power into his foot and propelled the wind-riding chariot at even greater speeds. Cultivator Song revealed shock as they soon tore through the skies and disappeared past the horizon. Several days ago, on the border of the states of Yu and Bailiang, the armies of cultivators and spell warriors commanded a flurry of magic tools and treasures carved into the earth, forming an extension of their original fortresses into massive war camps several tens of kilometers away from each other. In a single night, the area underwent a sweeping change. This deserted area was suddenly surging with men and murderous desire. There were even small groups of cultivators and spell warriors that patrolled around the war camps, wary of any surprise attacks the other side may bring. Afterwards, even more cultivators and spell warriors began to gather here with each passing day, and various spell formations were placed along each side of the border, adding even more tension in the air. But at the center of the border, there would occasionally be spell warrior and cultivator patrols that encountered each other. Although they coldly glared at each other, they were able to restrain themselves from fighting. After all, fighting now wouldn't accomplish anything. As such, they begrudgingly stifled their bloodthirst and waited for the decisive day. On the 6th day, the Heavenly South and the Mulan had finished placing down their grand formations, and they started to send their troops to probe the enemy, greatly decreasing the number of idle troops in camp. However, high-grade cultivators have also begun to accompany the patrols. Meanwhile, the higher echelons of both the Mulan and the Heavenly South began to nervously draft their plans for war. As Xianxia City was to the north of the cultivator war camp, it was natural that there were fewer restrictions placed there, but there were sentries and patrols placed there to a greater degree to compensate for it. As such, there was a group of over 10 cultivators that was calmly patrolling an area over 10 kilometers north from the war camp. The cultivator in charge was a beautiful woman that appeared to be in her 20s. She was an early core formation cultivator, and her subordinates were all foundation establishment cultivators. With the battle soon to come, none of them dared to be careless. Although this was only a routine patrol, the party was well alert. Only their leader appeared calm, but with her powerful spiritual sense, she was able to detect her surroundings clearly. Suddenly, the woman's expression stirred and she suddenly came to a stop. She glanced in the distant sky with an astonished expression, her subordinates soon following suit. Despite having not seen anything, they still maintained a lookout. Senior Zio, what? Before the blue-robed cultivator could finish his question, a streak of white light suddenly flickered from across the sky, quickly traveling before them. Such speed! One of the cultivators cried out in shock. In nearly the blink of an eye, the light streak grew far brighter, and something could be made out from within it. It should be that senior who stayed behind, but according to our rules we must question him. You can wait here for now. The young woman spoke without the slightest fear. She then flew forward in the flash of yellow light. The subordinate cultivators blankly glanced at each other during this time and remained silent. They didn't belong to the same sect as the woman, and they didn't dare to raise any objections due to their inferior cultivation. The woman stopped after flying for a short while and waited for the streak of white light to arrive. When the white light stopped, she could see a strange carriage within it due to the short distance between them. Junior is Yellow Maple Valley's Xianxia. Greetings, Senior. Junior is under orders to ask for your name. I hope for your understanding. Ye Xianxia. A voice spoke with astonishment from within the white light. Does Senior recognize this Junior? Xianxia blinked and wore an expression of astonishment. His voice wasn't among the nascent soul cultivators that she knew, but it seemed awfully familiar. As the woman gazed at the white light in shock, it faded away to reveal its true appearance. It was a strange white carriage with a young man and woman standing within it. The man was wearing long azure robes and had a common appearance. The woman was gorgeous and wore white. Martial Uncle Han. When she saw the azure-robed man, Xianxia covered her mouth and shouted in surprise. Her eyes were in complete disbelief. Little girl, you've grown. You're quite different from when I last saw you. Han Li examined the woman and wore a faint smile. Martial Uncle Han, it really is you. Although Senior Martial Sister Nai and Senior Martial Brother Lei had mentioned that Martial Uncle Han had formed a nascent soul, I had found it somewhat difficult to believe. Xianxia spoke with delight, her expression reminiscent of when she was still young. It was the only chance that I had encountered them at the time, Han Li said with a smile. In the past, he had recommended this woman to enter Yellow Maple Valley. Although he hadn't spoken with her much, he felt somewhat close to her, unlike with Nai Ying and Lei Wan, as she was the succeeding disciple of his senior martial brother Ma. When Cultivator Song saw this, her mind began to stir. She recalled hearing that her martial Uncle Han was once a disciple of Yellow Maple Valley. It seemed he had encountered an old acquaintance. What relationship did they have? Without heed of Cultivator Song, Han Li and Xianxia had a warm chat of the past. She had mentioned how she had escaped pursuit from the Devil Dao with his senior martial brother Ma, and how they returned to Yellow Maple Valley, as well as how senior martial brother Ma had passed away in meditation, and how she managed to form a golden core. The conversation reminded how much the world had changed around Han Li. But a short moment later, Xianxia hesitated for a moment before asking, Martial Uncle, have you truly become a drifting cloud sect elder? Can you not return? She appeared to be faintly hopeful when she said this. Yellow Maple Valley had found themselves in an awkward position. Although they still had ancestor Linghu watching over the sect, there were no other nascent soul cultivators to succeed him. When he reached the end of his lifespan, Yellow Maple Valley's position among the 6 sects of UA will surely fall. This is much to the worry of the Yellow Maple Valley core formation cultivators, Xianxia not excluded. Knowing that she had the best relationship with Han Li, the sect decided for Xianxia to raise the matter the next time she saw him, hoping that their old relationship would stir him. She couldn't help but raise the matter again despite Han Li's previous refusal with Lei Wan. Han Li's smile disappeared and he shook his head. I cannot return. The Drifting Cloud sect has treated me quite well. It's better to not mention this matter any further. Xianxia's expression dimmed, but our Yellow Maple Valley will. Han Li sighed. You don't need to worry too much. I've already made an agreement with Ancestor Linghu. If Yellow Maple Valley encounters any danger, I will be able to help you if it's within my abilities. Xianxia's spirits quickly returned after hearing him. So it was like that. Many thanks, Martial Uncle. After some thought, Han Li took out an emerald ring and a bottle of medicine pills. You're thanking me too early. Since you were senior martial brother Ma's sole disciple and I haven't seen you for so long, I can't just leave you be. Take this. It's a magic treasure that I acquired after killing a core formation cultivator. Although you cannot use it as your bonded magic treasure, it will be effective in battle after you refine it. And here are some medicine pills for your cultivation. It is effective in breaking through bottlenecks. Many thanks for Senior Martial Uncle's gift. Xianxia deeply bowed to him before happily receiving the 2 items. All right, I will be heading to the war camp now. It's best that I don't keep those old eccentrics waiting. If chance will have it, I'll see you again. Once he gave her the items, he bid his leave and streaked through the skies before Xiao had another opportunity to speak. Farewell, Marshal Uncle Han. With the carriage having already left, Xiao could only curtsy in a hurry. Afterwards, she remained in the air as she watched the streak of light drift off into the horizon. At that moment, her subordinates finally approached her. Senior Xiao, who was that senior? Was he a nascent soul cultivator? However, he appeared to be quite young. The cultivators gathered around and began to curiously talk among themselves. Xiao recalled her spiritual sense and her expression grew sullen. She icily swept her gaze past her subordinates and said, "Don't speak further of it. He is a nascent soul senior and he had treated me with great kindness in the past. He isn't someone to be gossiped about. Let's continue our patrol." Her subordinates immediately ceased speaking. With the wind riding chariot's great speed, they arrived near the war camp border after a short moment. Disliking how eye-catching the chariot was, Han Li put it away and decided to enter the war camp using personal flight. During this time, Cultivator Song tactfully kept silent about the previous event to Han Li's approval. The two soon arrived before a huge light barrier. It was dense and brightly shined with various colored light. It covered the entire war camp. Before he released Cultivator Song from his flight light, a cultivator standing guard hastily welcomed him. Once Han Li's identity was confirmed, he promptly opened a passage for them. Han Li parted ways with Cultivator Song once they entered. She went to report to Luluo before later joining the division of cultivators she was assigned to. As for Han Li, he went to the heart of the war camp where Master Sunrich and the others were waiting for him. They were pleased to see that Han Li had arrived. After a few polite greetings, they informed him of a few of the arrangements in the coming battle, but since he wasn't particularly interested, he soon took his leave. He then headed to a temporarily stone room and sat cross-legged, honing his spirit and strength. Han Li calmly sat down in the room. As time obviously passed by, the spiritual power he consumed on his way here had slowly recovered. When he opened his eyes once more, he wore a faint smile. Ever since his Azure Essence sword arts had been cultivated to the 10th layer, he could clearly feel his spiritual power returning far faster than normal. It had come as a pleasant surprise. With that thought, Han Li muttered to himself for a moment and he took out a wooden box that shined with black light. The box had several restriction talismans sealing it as they sparkled with azure light. With a sweep of his hand, the talismans flew off the box and into his sleeve. He then tapped the box and had it open to reveal what was inside. It was a palm-sized talisman that was covered in characters. There was also a small crimson flood dragon that could be faintly seen, roaming across its surface. Han Li extended his hand and beckoned to the talisman, having it fly into his hand. In the last few days, he had failed 3 times before finally refining the talisman. Although he didn't know how powerful it was certainly weaker than what was described of the past spirit subjugation talismans. After all, the flood dragon's soul was greatly weakened from his 3 failed attempts, but in the end, he would only be able to test its true strength in battle. Han Li gently stroked the various characters written on the talisman's surface and sank deep into thought, his expressions changing with his thoughts. As Han Li sat pondering in the room, there were several mysterious figures discussing something in a room underground, several tens of kilometers away in the Mulan encampment. There were 5 men and 2 women. Among them, there was 1 man and 1 woman who concealed themselves with black robes. 2 of the unconcealed spell warriors were recognizable to Han Li. The woman surnamed Le, the wielder of the ancient lantern who he had fought at the Yellow Drag on mountains, and the middle-aged scholarly man who pursued him for several days without end, the divine sage. As for the other 3, one was a shriveled old man with dark skin, a short man that wasn't even 4 feet tall, and a large embroidered-robed man with a majestic appearance. Seidla, how are the spirit oil preparations? You should know that the holy bird can only appear in this world as long as the sacred lantern burns. There can't be any mistakes. Despite the wrinkles on the old man's face, his eyes were bright and clear. The green-robed woman surnamed Le respectfully replied, "Divine Sage Zhu, please don't worry. My clan is treating this battle as a matter of life or death. We've brought out all the spirit oil that my clan has produced for over 1,000 years. It should be enough to employ the holy bird for the battle." The old man then turned his questions to the middle-aged scholarly man. "Brother Zhang, were there any problems with organizing the grand spirit technique formations? As our magic tools are inferior in number to the cultivators of the heavenly south, we must rely on the spirit technique formations to suppress them. The scholarly man calmly replied, "There is no problem. The hundreds of years I've spent researching spell technique formations weren't in vain. I've already organized several new grand formations for the assault. If the heavenly south cultivators are expecting the spirit technique formations of the past, they will certainly suffer. This will do. Brother Bai, once the melee starts, have the high-grade spell warriors summon the void spirit beasts to charge. Have them absorb the cultivators' attacks and waste as much of their magic power as possible." The old man gave a quick word to the short man before turning towards the black-robed man and politely saying, "Sect Master Fang, we will need your huge beasts' cooperation. Before the battle starts, I will give these huge beasts to you. However, I hope you will not back out of what we agreed on." The black-robed man's final words were laced with a deeper meaning. The shriveled old man's expression stirred and he callously said, "Back out. Brother Fang must be joking. How could we be so foolish as to offend your esteemed sect before the battle with the cultivators? In any case, your sifting yin sect is one of the 10 great devilish sects of the Jin Empire. When our Mulan tribe sees the heavenly south, we will pay back the debt as greatly as we can, as it isn't such a big matter to allow you to manage a few mortal countries. As for the mortals of the Yang clan, we don't care about their lives in the slightest." The black-robed man nodded and emotionlessly said, "That is good. Were if not for those righteous Dao fellows destroying our sect protecting treasure, we wouldn't need a large number of living souls to restore it. As such, we wouldn't have felt the need to participate in your war with the heavenly south cultivators. Collecting a vast quantity of living souls in the Jin Empire will certainly attract trouble from the righteous Dao. Although we have no fear of them, it would delay the treasure's restoration." The black-robed woman added on, "Additionally, all the cultivators' souls who die in this battle will belong to my sect. Surely, divine sage, you won't have any objections to this." She spoke with a hoarse and raspy voice much in contrast to her petite figure, much to the shock of those who heard her. When the old man heard him, his expression slightly stirred. "Of course, we have little concerns with what will happen to the souls of cultivators, but will you be able to identify them differently from our spell warriors? While we have turned a blind eye to your unrestrained collection of souls lost in previous battles, we wish for this one to turn out differently. We'll compensate you in other ways instead." "This is impossible. The souls of cultivators and spell warriors don't have any differences between them. Even if there was a method, there will be tens of thousands of lives lost tomorrow, yet you want us to differentiate each one. Do you 3 divine sages plan on breaking our agreement?" The black-robed man narrowed his eyes, and his eyes instantly glowed with green light. A sinister and cold chi rose from his body. When the scholarly man surnamed Zhang and the short man surnamed Bai saw this, they were inwardly furious. Although they didn't take any action, their bodies faintly shined with silver and red light respectively as they stared at the black-robed man. As for the large embroidered-robed man and the woman surnamed Le, they both stared daggers at the black-robed man as they wore displeased expressions on their faces. They have long been resentful of the fact at having the soul of spell warriors being collected. It was perhaps inevitable that there would be a falling out with these devil Dao cultivators from the Jin Empire. The old man sighed and his face grew solemn. "Cease. What are you doing? Sect Master Fang is a guest that I had personally invited. Could it be that you do not hold me in any regard?" The black-robed woman to the side sent a voice transmission to the black-robed man. When he heard this, the green light in his eyes withdrew and his strange aura faded away. The others sighed upon seeing this and released the spiritual power in their bodies. They clearly understood that while these devilish cultivators were displeasing to the eye, they were a necessity, not to mention that it wasn't a good time for any internal strife. With some further deliberation, he gritted his teeth and said, "How about this? You can gather together the souls, but you must do so stealthily after the battle. You cannot allow this to be seen, no matter what. Otherwise, we can't guarantee what will happen afterwards." The black-robed man's eyes flickered and he nodded. "All right, so be it. Our sect agrees." The Mulan spell warriors were still displeased by this arrangement, but they had no choice. At that moment the large embroidered-robed man asked, "Are your sect's battle preparations truly feasible? Are you not overreaching yourselves? The heavenly south also have their own devilish cultivators. Won't they see through you?" The black-robed man sneered with disdain. "Devilish cultivators, can they be considered as such? They merely cultivate some superficial techniques. Even if they hold confidence in their devilish techniques, they are merely the same on the surface. How would they know of the viciousness of true devil Dao techniques from antiquity?" The short man surnamed by smirked and said, "Is that so? But an elder of your esteemed sect was killed in an instant by a heavenly south cultivator of the same grade. Are you not underestimating them?" The black-robed man's eyes coldly glinted and he said nothing further apart from a snort. But at that moment, the black-robed woman took the opportunity to say, "I was just thinking of this matter. This cultivator with golden lightning is somewhat useful to our sifting yin sect. I hope that you three divine sages would be able to hand him over to us. How about it?" The shriveled old man wore a puzzled expression. "Hand him over to you? What, are you three unwilling to agree to a minor request?" As if dissatisfied, the woman's voice only grew more hoarse. The shriveled old man stared at the black-robed woman with an odd smile on his face. If it was only an ordinary early nascent soul cultivator, it would be no problem to hand him over to you. But if it involves the magic treasure with the golden lightning bamboo, it is a different story. The black-robed woman's mood grew sullen. Fellow Taoist Jew has already guessed it. The old man replied, "Although our Mulan plains have been somewhat destitute, I do know a bit about the three divine woods in the cultivation world. While there aren't many people that know of the divine devil-bane lightning, they do not include us." Seeing through his intentions, the black-robed man icily said, "Since you know of the divine devil-bane lightning, you must know that our devilish sects cannot allow this treasure to fall into the hands of others. Speak your conditions." The old man's wrinkly face trembled to form a mysterious smile. "It is quite simple. I heard that in addition to these huge beasts, your sect also refined many copper-armored corpses. I hope that in the crux of the battle tomorrow Brother Fang will command them to offer us some help. After all, we don't know how the cultivators will respond despite all our preparations. We will naturally wish to be more careful." After some deliberation, the black-robed man replied, "I didn't expect for fellow Taoist Jew to know so much about our sect's secret techniques. The copper-armored corpses may be easily refined, but it will be troublesome for our sect if we lost too many at once. With these conditions, we will need you to bring back this cultivator alive." When the shriveled old man heard the sect leader, he gloomily said, "Capture him alive? Is Brother Fan joking? You should know that fellow Taoist Zhang has already fought him once. Not only is he capable of lightning movement, but also a blood movement technique that hasn't been seen before. We are incapable of blocking him. With such vast abilities, even we are unable to restrain him. Fellow Taoists, do you believe this is possible? If the request is to kill this person and seize his golden lightning bamboo magic treasure, it will be much more possible. Since it is so difficult to capture him, then it is acceptable to kill him." To the old man's surprise, the black-robed man had quickly amended his condition. The shriveled old man exchanged a glance with the other spell warriors and had a quick exchange with them through voice transmission before agreeing to the matter. Afterwards, they began to discuss the specific details of the incoming battle. Master Sunreach, Wei Wuya, and a few others were having a discussion about the war in a large hall. In addition to the three great cultivators and Long Han, there were also a beautiful red-clothed woman and a bald, eagle-eyed old man. The old man's eyes were narrowed, and he wore a glistening jade ring that was engraved with faint talisman characters. It appeared quite rare. "Fellow Taoist Heaven-Venge, this war will depend on all of us. We will draw the main forces of the spell warrior army here. In the meantime, you and your men will steal into Soaring Heaven City and take everything from the city's resource depot. Even if the Mulan were able to make some use of it before the battle, if we draw this battle out, they will collapse without support from spirit stones or any other of their materials." Master Sunreach smiled at the old man before him, the renowned eccentric Heaven-Venge, as if nothing unpleasant had occurred between the two of them in the past. "So long as you are able to drag the Mulan divine sages to the border, it will naturally be no problem to infiltrate Soaring Heaven City, and with the transportation formation that fellow Taoist Wei has given me, directly entering the city will prove even easier. However, my sole worry is why the Mulan would leave their resource behind in the city. Is this not a trap that was set behind for us?" The eagle-eyed old man spoke with a voice reminiscent of clacking stones. It was rather uncomfortable to hear. Devil Conquered calmly said, "Fellow Taoist Heaven-Venge, please relax. According to our spies amongst the Mulan, although the Mulan tribes have occupied the states of Feng Yuan and Yi, they have no other supply of resources. Before we evacuated from those countries, we destroyed all the spirit stone mines and other material sources. In spite of the great efforts of the Mulan mortals to repair them, they weren't able to accomplish much in such a short amount of time. As of current, they are consuming a joint reserve of spirit stones that were pooled together from each of their tribes. These spirit stones are all distributed from a secret storehouse that is guarded by a formidable grand restriction. Additionally, there are several sages guarding it for safe measure. With these measures in place, there will be enough time to transport those materials out of the storehouse before it is breached by a potential attack. It is reasonable to say that these resources are as safe as can be. Wei Wuya coldly smiled and said, however, they hadn't expected that after the many years we spent at war, we were able to place spies in their ranks as they did with ours. One of the sages guarding the safe house is precisely one of our own. When the time comes, he will deactivate the grand formation. Fellow Taoist Heaven-Venge, so long as you and your people act with discretion, we will catch them entirely unprepared. You fellow Taoists seem so certain, but I can't help but ask what I will receive afterwards. Longhand answered with a smile. Once this war is done, our 4 superpowers will agree to give a section of land in the state of Su over to you. You may establish your own sect there, and we will not interfere in the slightest. From then on, you will be known as a sect founder. Good. Since you seem so confident, my good friends and I will make an attempt. Since it is already late, I will return first to make preparations. We'll then set off the next day and infiltrate the state of Su. Eccentric Heaven-Venge appeared satisfied with these conditions, but he had little intention of speaking further with them. He took his leave and soon disappeared from sight. Devil Conquered frowned and slowly said, that eccentric has good odds of succeeding. He will be bringing those vagrant eccentrics with him as well, each of them possessing profound abilities. If the Mulan aren't expecting it, there shouldn't be much reason for them to fail. Longhand's expression stirred and said, fellow Taoist, ye speaks truly. So long as we tie down the Mulan divine sages, fellow Taoist Heaven-Venge will most likely succeed. However, I didn't expect that this old eccentric would want to found a sect at his age, not to mention gathering together so many vagrant cultivators to form their own faction. It comes as quite a surprise. Master Sunreach leisurely said, I would say otherwise. Eccentric Heaven-Venge has entered mid-nascent soul stage for at least 300 years. After being unable to break through to late nascent soul stage during this time, I reckon that he has admitted failure. In this case, it is no surprise that he has become committed to something else. Being able to become the founder of a sect will gain much glory for him. However, he has made many enemies out of various large sects and is taking this opportunity to discuss terms with us. His arrival has come as unexpected reinforcements. Enough. Although we have eccentric Heaven-Venge handling some subterfuge, we cannot be careless at the start of this battle. We must prevail. If we are defeated, we will not be able to stop them, regardless of whatever resources they may possess. Master Sunreach paused before continuing, Brother Wei, will your 9 Nations Union have any problems blocking their Grand Spirit technique formations? This should be the Spell Warrior's most common tactic for a melee. Wei Wuya calmly said, in the many years we've fought them, we've gained an understanding towards spirit technique formations no less than that of their own masters. Were it not for the problem of techniques, our 9 Nations Union would have been able to employ spirit technique formations of our own. There is no need for fellow Taoist Sunreach to worry over the issue. Master Sunreach was satisfied by his answer, and then he looked at the large black-robed man. When Devil Conquered saw this, he began speaking. Our 6 Devil Dao sects have already made preparations. Not only do we have the controlling spirit sect's 3 sect protecting beasts, our harmonious bond sect has also made preparations to release the dual yin-yang devils from their restrictions. The ghost spirit sect's myriad souls formation is also ready for us. As for the other sects, they each have made various preparations of their own as well. Fellow Taoist Sunreach, have your Righteous Tao Alliance prepared killing maneuvers as well? Our Righteous Tao Alliance had already started. Each sect has opened the halls of their founding ancestors, acquiring many ancient treasures of great power. They definitely won't leave fellow Taoists disappointed. Master Sunreach spoke curtly, but Devil Conquered nodded with a less tense expression, as if already knowing of the existence of these ancient treasures. Longhand revealed a trace of regret. Our Heavenly Tao Union is rather lax in this regard. Our various sects have begun preparation, but there isn't much that I specifically know about. As for our Phoenix Cry sect, they have taken several ancient Jade talismans out of storage. Their might will be quite eye-opening for the Mulan, but given all the time that has passed, their power has waned. After the battle, they will be completely exhausted. Ancient Jade talismans. I didn't think that the Phoenix Cry sect possessed such treasures. I believe the other Heavenly Tao Alliance sects won't be disappointing us either. With that address, our sole worries are the black-robed men and the wagered battle. Master Sunreach pondered for a moment before hesitantly asking, Brother Yi, those black-robed men used Devil Dao techniques. Are you able to recognize what they were? Devil Conquered unhappily snorted. Their techniques may be devil Dao, but this is the first time I've heard techniques of this type. I cannot make an accurate judgment, but there is no doubt that their devil Dao techniques are far more pure and ingenious than the 6 devil Dao sects of the Heavenly South. Additionally, they appeared to resemble the Ghost Spirit Sect's techniques. The Ghost Spirit Sect, Master Sunreach pondered for a moment before continuing with a solemn expression. We don't know how many those black-robed men there are, but during the siege of Soaring Heaven City, 8 of them appeared, all at nascent soul stage. There are clearly cultivators of the same sect. As for where this devilish sect has come from, could it be the Grand Empire of Jin? When the others heard Master Sunreach, they didn't appear surprised. It seemed they had assumed the same. At that moment the red-clothed woman finally spoke, her voice cold and clear. Humph. So what if they're Jin Empire cultivators? From how secretive they've been acting, as if afraid of being seen, it is certain that they are only a single devilish sect, or perhaps only a single branch of one. What is there to be afraid of? We merely have to treat them as spell warriors and feign ignorance otherwise. Master Sunreach agreed. Lady Feng words are reasonable. Even if a branch of the Jin Empire's Devil Dao is fully supporting the Mulan, we won't be handing over the Heavenly South to them either, despite how powerful they may be. That is right, but we must take into account that not only will the Jin Empire Devil cultivators have superior magic treasures, but that they will meddle in the wagered battles tomorrow through some hidden scheme. It will be troublesome. The Jin Empire possesses countless secret techniques, many of which are impossible to defend against. It doesn't matter. I've already considered this. Do you remember our Great Truth Sect's restriction-breaking bead? Longhan astonishedly asked. The restriction-breaking bead, the single-used magic tool that can destroy restrictions. Isn't it only useful against low-grade restrictions? The barrier used during the wagered battles, capable of resisting strikes from a nascent soul cultivator, are capable of being dissolved with this magic tool. Master Sunreach explained. If it were that restriction-breaking bead, it definitely wouldn't have an effect on a high-grade restriction. Brother Long may not know this, but the restriction-breaking beads that have spread are only half-finished goods. True restriction-breaking beads not only require many precious materials, but they are also difficult to refine. As a result, they possess great efficacy at breaking high-grade restrictions. Of course, since my sect hadn't used them often, we hadn't refined many of them. But for those fellow Taoists that will be fighting in the wagered battles, my sect has managed to gather together 10 restriction-breaking beads. So long as they have this on hand, they will be able to break the barrier and escape, given that they aren't immediately dealt with. As such, there is no need to worry about the future. Devil Conquered glanced at Master Sunreach and added on, I did wonder why Master Sunreach was so calm about the wagered battles tomorrow. So it turned out he had a trick up his sleeve. With these restriction-breaking beads, we will have no need to fear the enemy's tricks. To be safe, our Devil Dao's Heaven Fiend sect has refined a medicine pill for the occasion, the Death Return Pill. The pill will stimulate one's true essence, having most of their magic power to instantly replenish and increasing their cultivation slightly as well. However, once the effects ended, their vitality will be diminished. I will be able to give these fellow Taoists a pill each. If they reach a critical moment of danger, they will be able to take the pill and use it to great effect. That is great. With these 2 fallbacks, I feel much more relieved about the wagered battles. Longhand smiled and then he changed the subject. These people cultivate Devil Dao techniques. Why not have some fellow Taoists from the Righteous Dao deal with them? After all, the Great Truth Sect, as well as several other sects, have many techniques that specialize in restraining devilish arts. They should be quite suitable in dealing with these black-robed men. Longhand glanced at Master Sunreach and waited for his reply. Master Sunreach openly replied, Of course, these Devil Dao cultivators will be handled by our Righteous Dao Alliance. However, you all will be putting most of the effort into handling the Mulan sages. This is only natural. The spell warriors will be dealt with the other 3 superpowers, specifically by. The others had been quite happy to see that Master Sunreach has agreed to deal with the devil cultivators of the Jin Empire. They began discussing the matter thoroughly until sunset before feeling at ease. With negotiations coming to an end, each party began to make their own preparations. At early dawn the next day, the patrolling cultivators caught sight with shining light and heard earth-shaking trembles from the Mulan war camp. Squads among squads of spell warriors calmly flew out from the war camp on their magic tools that they flew towards the center of the sky. At that moment, the patrolling cultivators hastily sent back word through voice transmission talismans. A short moment later, the Heavenly South war camp began to sound with drawn-out bell rings, sending countless streaks of light to fill the sky from the opposite direction. For a time, various colored light filled the skies as clear rings and long whistles continuously sounded out. And with the overbearing advance of the spell warrior army from the other side, it appeared as if two huge waves were about to clash against each other in the sky. But when they reached about 5 kilometers apart, when they were able to catch sight of one another, both sides came to a sudden stop and began to observe one another from the distance. Neither army retreated, resolved to fight until the other was wiped out. On one side were natives who lived on this land their entire lives. Their morale was soaring, unwilling to allow the enemies to invade their homelands. However, neither side moved despite the pervasive killing intent filling the air. At that moment, Han Li was above a division of over 1,000 cultivators. He was watching the spell warrior army from the distance. There were bright lights reaching out as far as the eye could see. Each light was a concentration of several hundreds of spell warriors, a continuous glow spanning over 5 kilometers. It was clear that both sides have brought out their main forces. Although one couldn't precisely count their numbers, there were at least 70,000 cultivators present. Additionally, rarely seen high-grade cultivators were now a common sight. Although their numbers were vast, the differences between each army were clear to see. While the Mulan spell warriors were all differently dressed, their low-grade cultivators all possessed simple magic tools. They either used bowls and fist-sized beads, or even various colored flags. Blade-type magic tools were extremely sparse in number. As for the Heavenly South cultivators, their low-grade cultivators possessed a myriad of magic tools, with blade magic tools being in a majority. However, these magic tools were each sparkling with light, possessing astonishing spiritual qi. It was obvious their magic tools were superior to those of the Mulan. Although the Heavenly South cultivators were better equipped, the spell warriors were better disciplined. As they flew in the air, they continued to maintain a mysterious formation. They were all silent as they watched their enemies with hostility. The cultivators, on the other hand, could barely maintain formation and were in complete disarray. It was clear they didn't have enough training. Not only were they whispering incessantly to one another, but they would occasionally separate from their ranks to do other things. The high-grade cultivators in charge had no choice to rebuke their troops, much to the commander's frustrations. When Han Li saw this, he frowned. This came as no surprise. In only a few months' time, how was it possible to properly train so many unruly cultivators? In comparison, the Mulan tribes were often at war with the soaring tribes. As a result, it was a common occurrence for them to be arranged in army formations. They were constantly trained. This matter was obvious to the higher echelon of cultivators, but there was little they could do. Fortunately for them, this wasn't as crucial a factor for victory unlike in mortal armies. As such, they turned a blind eye to these problems. As Han Li thought about this, he examined the Mulan army. What was most eye-catching about them weren't the spell warriors, but the dozen of enormous huge beasts that laid amongst their ranks. They appeared almost like small mountains amongst them. Many Nine Nations Union cultivators had personally witnessed the ferocity of these huge beasts and look at them with a trace of fear as a result. Han Li raised his head upwards to see clear skies completely clear of black clouds. He then looked down at the chaotically organized cultivators and shook his head with a sigh. He soon flipped his head and glanced at the two items in his palm, a thumb-sized black bead and an almond-sized medicine pill with a pungent and colorful scent. These two items were sent to him by Master Sunreach on the day before. Han Li was given an explanation of them, and it was said that every cultivator participating in the wagered battles were given them. He accepted them with surprise. It seemed in order to win this war, the three great cultivators were sparing no expense, taking out the treasures that they were keeping hidden. However, the three great cultivators weren't the only ones taking out their reserves. Han Li couldn't help but glance at an adjacent division of cultivators below. They numbered about 1,000 and had 16 cultivators that wore red and green clothes. They were carrying two huge coffins together, one black and one white, side by side. Several tins of various colored talismans were covering it. Han Li easily recognized these cultivators. They were disciples of the Harmonious Bond sect, the top Devil Dao sect. This had aroused much of Han Li's interest in these coffins. It was only a pity that the formidable restrictions on the coffin blocked his spiritual sense to looking deeper inside. Apart from the two coffins, there were also a few other eye-catching objects amongst the rank of cultivators. There was a righteous Dao sect that was carrying a 20-meter-tall copper platform with a huge 3-meter-wide gong on top. The surface of the gong shined with sparkling golden light and would occasionally reveal white talisman characters floating above it. There was a large, bare-chested man that was sitting cross-legged at its side with his eyes closed. Amongst a division of cultivators farther away, there were many black sculptures that were nearly 10 meters tall and were being pulled by a few flying carriages. They appeared to be modeled vicious beasts from antiquity and were carved with vivid, lifelike details. It was unknown what they were used for. Every division of cultivators seemed to have a strange item within it. When Han Li saw this, he felt more at ease. The various sects knew that this battle was extremely important and they brought out their own sect protecting treasures. As a result, the odds of victory were far greater. And in addition to these treasures, there were also countless other formidable items hidden inside storage pouches. As for the spell warrior armies, they didn't have anything obvious to see apart from the huge beasts. However, Han Li still felt uneasy. The spell warriors were certain to have hidden schemes, certain to be deadly as they lay hidden. It was truly difficult to say who would win the battle. At that moment, an unending stream of cultivators and spell warrior armies had finally all gathered together. Then, apart from a select few, both armies dropped to the ground, and silence filled the air. An uproar was raised amongst the spell warrior armies as 3 people flew out from its ranks, the 3 divine sages, a shriveled old man, a very short man, and a scholarly man. 3 streaks of light also emerged from the cultivators' side, revealing Master Sunreach, Wei Wuya, and Devil Conquered. They were each stopped tens of kilometers apart. The scholarly man surnamed Zhang glanced at the cultivators and coldly said, "There is still time for you to come to an agreement. So long as the Heavenly South hands over half of their land over to our Mulan tribes, we will cease hostilities and become friends. Otherwise, your Heavenly South cultivation world will be certain to suffer a great loss of strength, regardless of the outcome." Wei Wuya raised his chin and said, "What a joke! We may suffer a great loss in strength, but if you lose this war, you will face extermination. I should be cautioning you spell warriors instead." The shriveled old man spoke bluntly. "It seems there is no point in speaking any further. There is no room for discussion. Now, there can only be a battle of life and death. But before that, let us conduct the wagered battles. Let us send out our people and set up the restrictions. Regardless of the outcome of these wagered battles, we will immediately start the war once they are concluded." At this stage, he realized that having the 3 great cultivators admitting defeat was merely wishful thinking. Devil Conquered stared at the old man and coldly smiled. "Of course we will agree to the wagered battles. However, where are the captives you've promised? I don't see anyone, hee." Once the old man heard this, he blankly stared in through before sending a voice transmission to someone behind him. Suddenly, a spell warrior division began to shuffle, revealing over 1,000 unarmed cultivators among their ranks. The cultivators were then placed in front of the army, each wearing a variety of expressions. There were even those that were flushed with anger and were glaring at the spell warriors. This had aroused an uproar in some of the cultivator ranks. Some cultivators recognized a few fellow sect members amongst the captives. When Master Sunreach and the others saw this, they exchanged a glance and nodded. The short man of the Mulan divine sages grew impatient. "What now? You've seen them, so you should feel at ease. Quickly start the wagered battles." Wei Wuya suddenly asked, "Why is your esteemed self so anxious? Could it be that you're planning something with these wagered battles?" The short man's face stirred and he menacingly said, "If you don't dare to fight the wagered battle, we will string these cultivators up on banners and then start the battle. Would you like that?" A cold glint flickered from Wei Wuya's eyes. He sternly asked, "You're threatening us?" At that moment the shriveled old man sinisterly said, "It isn't a threat at all. If you aren't willing to conduct the wagered battles, we no longer have use for these captives, apart from hanging them and stirring up morale." When Master Sunreach heard this, he frowned and said, "But if we agree to the wagered battle, you will have to release the captives first." The short man bluntly rebuked, "Release them. You believe that we would do something so foolish. But we are also distrustful of you. What can we do if you don't keep your promise?" Wei Wuya calmly asked. "Even with this, Before the short man could finish, an ominous glint flickered from the shriveled old man's eyes, and he interrupted him. "Enough with these useless words. We will first release half of the captives before the wagered battle takes place. We will hand over the remaining captives once they are over. You must have no objections about this, right? If that won't do, then we will simply start the battle." Master Sunreach spoke to the other 2 at his side through voice transmission and said with a decisive tone, "Fine, that will do. Release half of the men and we will begin to set up the restrictions on our end." These conditions were the most that the enemy could concede. If the negotiations truly collapsed, he would have no way of rescuing those remaining cultivators. With the matter decided, the six returned to their respective war camps and made their arrangements. Han Li already left his original hiding spot from inside a division of cultivators. He hadn't wished to be noticed by the enemy high-grade cultivators before the battle started. As for conversation between the late nascent soul cultivators, Han Li was able to eavesdrop on them with his powerful spiritual sense. With a faint smile on his face, he saw the spell warriors release half of the restrictions on the captive cultivators. They all flew back towards the heavenly south cultivators with delight. Of course, Master Sunreach was already prepared for this. Before the cultivators flew back to the heavenly south armies, a party of several hundred cultivators flew to meet them halfway. After inspecting the cultivators that were released and confirming that there were no spies among them nor any tricks placed on their bodies, they were released to join the cultivator ranks. The short man surnamed Bai watched this from a distance and resentfully snorted. Those heavenly south fellows are quite careful. Fortunately, we hadn't used those heart drain pills on those cultivators beforehand. Otherwise, it would have been difficult to deal with. The scholarly man surnamed Zhang said, "Without a doubt, the three great cultivators of the heavenly south aren't easily dealt with. These small tricks won't work. To kill a serpent, we must strike at its heart. If we try to be clever dealing with these cultivators, we will only end up overreaching ourselves." When the old man heard this, he didn't reveal the slightest chance in expression. He merely curled his sparsely haired beard and watched the vast army of cultivators across from him. When Han Li watched from a distance, a group of cultivators and spell warriors flew out from their respective factions towards the center point between each army. They divided into groups of 10 and began to lay out spell formations. These men were all spell warriors and cultivators that were spell formation masters. Although they needed to place some powerful restrictions, there weren't any tricks that could be placed. As these people possessed vast attainments in the Tao of spell formations, nothing could be hidden from one another. Ordinarily, placing down restrictions of this rank would consume a large amount of time. But with so many spell formation masters simultaneously working together, making liberal use of precious materials and prepared formation flags and plates, it took only a quarter hour of time to complete 10 small spell formations that shined with white light. As soon as the formations were activated, they created 10 barriers of white light that each spanned over 250 meters. After these spell formation masters re-examined the restrictions, they saw no problems and each departed. They were then exchanged for 10 core formation stage spell warrior and cultivators. They flew over to the barriers, each one guarded by both a single cultivator and spell warrior to prevent any tampering. One of the heavenly south cultivators happened to be Cultivator Song from the Drifting Cloud sect. She appeared to be assigned to watch over the second spell formation barrier. Han Li didn't appear surprised by her appearance in the least. Since Han Li was going to participate in the wagered battles, it was only suitable that a disciple from his own sect was to guard him. If he were being guarded by the disciple of a hostile sect, they may hesitate to act or even choose to remain still as danger approached. As a result, Han Li took the initiative to raise this matter with Cultivator Song. She was most familiar Drifting Cloud sect cultivator to him. With the spell formations finished, it was time for the fighters to appear. At that moment, 10 black-robed cultivators flew out from the Mulan warriors, each of them brimming with a pervasive devilish aura. Devil cultivators. Han Li's pupils shrank back and he shot into the air towards the spell formations at the center, along with 9 other nascent soul eccentrics. Taoist Shattered Soul, Devil Cloudpart, and the woman surnamed Bai were amongst them, but there were 3 among them that he didn't recognize. When they arrived in front of the spell formations, they came to a stop. When Han Li arrived above the spell formations, he nodded to Cultivator Song down below and calmly faced the black-robed man across from him. How strange! Why is the devilish chi from their body so frantic? Could it be that they've taken an overbearing pill like the Death Return pill? Han Li retained an indifferent appearance as he pondered. The black-robed man appeared ordinary, but his eyes flickered with cold green light as he stared at Han Li. Although Han Li couldn't make out his face, it was undoubtedly a cultivator at the peak of early nascent soul stage, just a step away from entering mid-nascent soul stage. Han Li then turned his attention to the other black-robed devil cultivators. They appeared to be nearly the same as his own opponent and had very few differences between them. Han Li's heart stirred with vigilance. There was definitely something wrong with the wagered battle. There wasn't a single mid-nascent soul cultivator among their opponents, but this would prove no matter to him. So long as his opponent used Devil Dao techniques, he will be able to use the divine devil-bane lightning to instantly exterminate them. None of their tricks would be of any use against him. In the blink of an eye, Han Li resolved himself, and killing intent surged through his heart. At that moment, the black-robed cultivator took out a storage pouch from his waist and emotionlessly glanced at Han Li. Han Li smiled and took out a storage pouch filled with materials, the wager for the match. The materials in the storage pouch were something that the four powers of the heavenly south had gathered together. They were extremely valuable and caused even Han Li to feel covetous. With a wave of his arm, the black-robed man tossed the storage pouch over to him. Han Li narrowed his eyes and did the same, exchanging their storage pouches. The black-robed man's storage pouch didn't possess a large variety of materials, but its value was easily greater than his own. From what he learned from ancient records, none of the materials appeared amiss. Han Li nodded and simply placed the storage pouch at his waist. The black-robed man mirrored him. When Cultivator Song and the Spell Warrior saw this, they both began to mutter an incantation and form hand seals. Various spell seals struck the formation and began to activate it. Han Li and the black-robed cultivator both acted quickly, and their bodies blurred, simultaneously appearing in front of the spell formation below. This caused the both of them to glance at each other with slight surprise. At that moment, a milky white barrier appeared around them and isolated them from the outside. The other cultivators and the black-robed men had also entered in the light barriers. For a time, there was complete silence amongst both armies. They held their breaths with anxiousness as they stared at the 20 vague silhouettes through the barrier of light. Having entered the barrier, Han Li didn't pay further attention to any of the others. He simply watched the black-robed cultivator across from him and remained still. However, blue light began to swirl around him, and flying swords began to tremble as if they were about to launch themselves. Of course, the most vicious weapon he had against devil cultivators was the fist-sized mass of golden light that was condensed in his dantian. Han Li saluted his opponent with a chuckle before launching an earth-shattering strike.